taking control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride. If you're listening in at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, or on Revolution Radio, we appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. Thank you for being large and in charge with us as we broadcast out of Uncle Jimbo's cabin right here in the Great White North. Live on this Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we broadcast every night of the week as we want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the supernatural, paranormal, cryptozoological, UFOlogical, and so much more. If you like our theme music, you can thank the guitar god himself, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses. Bumblefoot is the official music of SOR. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Find us on TuneIn, download our shows from iTunes, and of course our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, we say hello to everyone who's listening in on the Revolution Radio chat room, on the High Plains Talk Radio Network, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, Force Moon Paranormal, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. If you haven't signed up for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet, it's time. Only $5 a month. Your name gets put into monthly prize draws. You get access to private group interviews, access to a special section on our website, and much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While on our website, you can read up on the latest blogs, check out Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for your latest and weird news, and the SOR Sightlines Report is now here for you. If you've had an experience, UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, paranormal, and you can't explain it, our researcher, Mike Schmidt, is going to get a hold of you. All you have to do is fill out a Sightlines report. All information is 100% confidential. Remember, if you're a listener on Revolution Radio, the Double R Machine is the largest non-profit online radio station going. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. Tonight on Spaced Out Radio, we continue our lead up to Halloween with John Ventre tonight, who is making his second appearance on this show over the last couple of months. John is one of those deep-thinking investigators and researchers who is actually looking to solve what's out there, compared to others who are just wanting answers from the government or other officials. John has seen UFOs, and he's also had his own paranormal experiences. And it's going to be very interesting tonight because John is going to show us how he believes both the paranormal and ufological are tied together. There does seem to be some strong correlation between the two, and yet most investigators of one form or the other forget or ignore the possibilities that these two groups do cross paths. John's latest book is called The UFOlogist, and you can pick it up on Amazon, any major bookstore, his website, MUFONPA.com. And if you're on the East Coast or heading that way, the weekend before Halloween, you can actually head to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. John's going to be having a huge, and I mean huge, Paracon happening there. John Ventre, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. How are you?
Good, very good. Thanks for having me back on.
Oh, anytime, my friend. You know you got the keys to this ship, so you might as well use it. That's always good. I love the fact, and before we get started, that there are so many Paracons that surround Halloween. Tell us a little bit about the one that you have going on in Philadelphia coming up in just a couple weeks' time.
Yeah, this is our ninth conference we're doing there. It's in Bucks County, where the 2008 UFO wave was, and we did a few TV shows on that wave, and that's why we started the conference there. What we do is on Friday night we show a couple episodes of my UFO talk show I do in Pittsburgh. Then we have two speakers and a cocktail hour with the speakers, with all the speakers. On Saturday, there's 5 more speakers, including David Paulides, Daryl Sims, myself, Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright, Linda Zimmerman, and then we do a dinner, and that's going to be with Major George Filer on military cases. So it's a Friday night, all day Saturday, and it's done very well. We're looking at a record year right now for attendance based on the pre-registers. So you would go to MUFONPA.com. And next year will be our 10th anniversary, and I guarantee you that's going to be the biggest conference we've done so far.
Well, I have to tell you, John, I'm pretty excited because this weekend coming up here, I am going to be one of the keynote speakers at the Forest Moon Paranormal Paracon in Concrete, Washington, which is about 90 minutes north of Seattle. I'm kind of nervous, my friend, because I've never spoken at a Paracon before, let alone be a keynote speaker right off the bat, so I'm a little humbled and honored. You got to give me some tips and advice here.
Well, you just tell them the truth. And, it's funny, I do a radio show on Live Paranormal called The String Theory of the Unexplained, and I've actually outed a couple of people that are just frauds, and the shame is you can make stuff up and the audience will sit there and shake their head and wide-eyed and not know the difference, but somebody along the line like myself is going to call you on it. So, you just tell the truth as to what actually happened or what you know, and that's the best you can do, so I wouldn't worry about it. There's a big difference when you speak among our, genre, and you always got to remember that. You don't worry about speaking among our followers. You got to be concerned when you speak to people who don't follow this, because they don't believe you and they think you're nuts. But when you talk among, UFO conferences, Paracons, we're fine. We're on the same page.
Well, I'm going to be talking about the importance of the experiencer, because I've done well over 600 shows now on Spaced Out Radio over the last couple of years, and I can tell you this. The one thing that I have learned is, for a lot of these lead or A-list investigators out there, John, and you've probably seen it as well, they do want to hear the story. They do want to hear what a person goes through. But I've also heard they're not using that as research anymore. And I've had people say that on the episode. They feel bad for the person, but in their mind, the experience is just not as relevant as finding out what the government knows or what the NSA or CIA or Black Ops is hiding. And therefore, the people, once again, get kind of dropped, and they're the ones saying, please, get me some answers. So that's what I'm going to be speaking about. And I'm sure you have some big thoughts on the experiencers out there.
Absolutely, and that's really what my tonight's show is going to talk about also. And, I just got a message from Audrey Hewins earlier today, because her and I had gone back and forth a little bit over the abduction thing. And, I had my own experience this past Thanksgiving that we're going to talk about. And she sent me a text saying that they're not all demons. Some are good and they're angels. So, but there's a connection here, and I'm going to make it very clear tonight what I believe and how a lot of things tie together.
Well, I am glad that you are going to be tying it all together tonight, because I do believe our main topic for tonight is there a real tie-in between the paranormal and the ufological crowds, and I do strongly believe there is, so I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. But before we do, last time you were on, we focused a lot on the Kecksburg incident in the 60s. Now, you believe that it was not a UFO, and you described that extremely well. But you have an update for us from the last time you were on.
Yeah, it's amazing whether it was from being on your show or just the article was printed in the MUFON Journal. Well, it was also printed on a military website called Stars and Stripes. So, I should have asked the guy. We got contacted in August by a source up in Paris, Maine, and he said to Owen Eichler and I that he knows who the guy was that headed up the investigation in Kecksburg. And that's huge because of all of the crash landing big cases, Kecksburg is one where no one from the military side has come forward. So what he did was he gave us a boatload of information. Now, unfortunately, the guy passed away 3 years ago who he's telling us about, but we were able to verify a lot of the information. And what we were told was that the guy who headed up the Kecksburg investigation's name was Harold H. Rawson. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. And that's important because Project Blue Book stated that they only sent 3 Air Force personnel to Kecksburg, and that was it. So if this is true, we can prove that Blue Book lied because this guy was from the Army. And all the witnesses in Kecksburg said there were about 24 Army, 3 Air Force, and 4 NASA people there. So this guy, Harold H. Rawson, was at Roswell and Kecksburg, and he had a 21-year career, and he left the Army the year after Kecksburg. That would have been in 66. He left the Army. So real good story. We were able to verify his military record. We spoke to relatives and people that knew him. He would tell the story of being at Kecksburg. The interesting twist on it is that he was told by his superiors that Kecksburg was a Russian satellite, probably the Cosmos 96, but we don't think they told him the truth. They told him that so that he would head up the investigation, but they didn't tell him the truth as to what actually was there, because Cosmos 96 came down 13 hours earlier. What Rawson did, though, is when the investigation ended and it was all done with, like weeks later, months later, he destroyed all of the evidence. He was so concerned for national security that this was going to start an international incident with the Soviet Union. Like, it was right after the Gary Powers incident, when you think about that, with the U-2 spy plane, and this was really a spy satellite. So what he did was he destroyed the evidence before he left the Air Force, and that's the reason why when the Sci-Fi Channel sued NASA, they couldn't get any evidence. They could not find the box of evidence because Harold H. Rawson destroyed it and left the Army because he thought he was protecting us against a international incident. But he wasn't told the truth about what was really in Kecksburg. It was a U.S. Spy satellite over Russia. So that's a cool update, and it came out, through the media by getting word out on our investigation into it as a spy satellite. And I think that reinforces, the article we wrote, and that the Project Blue Book lied.
That amazes me that this gentleman in the Army was at Roswell and at Kecksburg as well. It almost seems like if he was in both places, this guy was almost like a UFO expert for the military, well, the Army side of the military.
Yeah, it seemed like in talking to the source that the Rawson was at Roswell, but really he had just joined the military, the Army, I think maybe a year or two before. Off the top of my head, I can't remember if he went into the Army in 45 or 46, but we did verify his military record, and it spanned, I think it was 1945 to 66 that he was in. So he was probably at Roswell by mistake, or he just happened to be stationed there, and then worked his way up to lieutenant colonel. And then he was actually in Connecticut, and when Kecksburg came down, he got the call in Connecticut to get on a military flight and get down to Pittsburgh, and he headed up the investigation.
That is pretty intense when you think about that. I mean, all that information coming out just now, 60-some years after this happened. It's amazing how that information still flows through this far away from the actual event. Eventually, it all leaks, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, this was a friend of the family. The daughter, other relatives, other friends all heard the stories. We even contacted the funeral home to look at the who attended his funeral, that type of thing. And, we did as much as we could on this. Unfortunately, the guy passed away. I think he was 93 years old, and he passed away in 2013. So, I can't say 100% that I proved this part of it, but everything the guy told us matches up. So this could be a very important part of the story.
Well, you'll have to keep us abreast with this situation, because I'm sure if this ball has dropped, there's other balls that are going to drop as well, where we might be able to get an answer to what actually did crash at Kecksburg. Because 100% proof would be nice.
Yeah, and there's got to be other military people out there that were there and present that could come forward.
Mm-hmm. The hard part is, John, that era is dying off very, very quickly now. So,
when you think about it,
yeah.
all of the big cases, I don't know that there's anyone left from Roswell, from the Flatwoods case in West Virginia. There are so many of these great cases from the 40s and 50s, that those people have pretty much passed away. Now you're looking at the people from the 60s, and they're getting up there in age too. Soon, all of those, it's almost like when you look at, and I look at this for nostalgia, they'll talk about who's the last soldier from World War I, and there were actually two guys in the United States that died pretty close to each other. That were the last two that served in World War I. And shortly we're going to be talking, in our lifetime or in the next 10 years, who was the last surviving soldier of World War II. And it happens because we're human and time takes its toll, but it's the same thing happening with the UFO field.
Well, let me ask you this, John. How important is it, as a researcher who's right in the thick of things like you are, how important is it for you and your colleagues to start digging deep to see who is alive and who might be on their deathbed willing to give a deathbed confession for that one last piece of evidence, because they know they no longer have to keep that secret? How important is it to try and grab that info now? Because when it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, and the shame is, I think that, we know the names of the people involved, let's say who was at the case, whatever, and who was abducted, but that's not where the info is going to come from. That deathbed confession is going to come from somebody we don't even know. Somebody that, like I said, was in the military, or some other witness that's going to come forward at the 11th hour and say, let me tell you what really happened, and here's a signed deposition, and we don't know the names of those people right now who might have been the military person. So, it's very important, but, the skeptics still look at it and debunk it as just a story, and you can't really prove any of this.
Well, 1 month from today, I hope you listen in. We have Gerald Anderson, along with Renee Karkin and a couple of other people, UFO investigators, who Gerald Anderson was a live witness at 5 years old when he saw the UFO crash site at San Augustine. He was one of his dad, his uncle, and his brother and cousin were the ones who actually stumbled upon it. And they believe that ship crashed into the Roswell UFO in Corona. So I want you to listen to that show, because Gerald's now 74 and he still remembers it like a plain as day. So it's going to be a good show from a live eyewitness 1 month from today.
You know who's one that I'd love to speak to, and you just triggered my memory here, and I'll give you a good example. The Battle of L.A., 1942, in my opinion, is the start of the modern UFO era, not Roswell in 47. It was the Battle of LA in 42, because it was the first time we fired on a UFO. the first time we denied their existence, and the first time we used the weather balloon excuse. And then we got that memo from the general, can't think of his name right now, who said that something went down off the coast of California, and we started the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit. This was highly important, but nobody talks about it. But there was a witness to it, and you got me thinking now. There was a witness to it who was 9 years old at that time. He went on to write the Fire Officer's Guide to Disaster Control, and Chapter 13 is on UFOs. And he's still alive. And he's in that book. He went on to become an attorney. He served in the military, and he was the deputy fire chief of Los Angeles. So this is an accomplished guy. And in Chapter 13, he talks about what he saw the night of February 25th, 1942. And he put that chapter in the book because he knows the UFO phenomenon's real, and he wrote how to react to it, how to handle it, and a warning to stay away from the craft and all of that. But that's a great guy to talk to, and he's now got to be probably 90 years old.
Oh, goodness. Trying to get him to stay up at midnight or 9 o'clock West Coast time might be difficult.
Yeah. Well, he's on the West Coast. He's over in the West Coast. So,
yeah. Well, you never know. What's that book called again? The Fire Officer's Guide?
Yeah, The Fire Officer's Guide to Disaster Control, Chapter 13, one of the best chapters you'll ever read. And this book is in every fire department in the country. I think they're on the third or fourth edition of it. I have the second edition, but Chapter 13 it's called UFOs and the Threat. One of the best reads you'll ever do on the UFO topic, and not very many people know about this. And it's in a FEMA-approved hazmat book in every fire department. There's a chapter on UFOs.
Very interesting indeed. We have you here to talk a little bit about paranormal because you've had some strange paranormal experiences, one demonic. Never mind all the UFO stories you not only have experienced but covered as well. I want to talk about your interest in the paranormal. When did this start for you, John? Was it way before the UFOs ever started, or was it something that just kind of came along as the UFOs did?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I never had any interest in any of this. I'm going to talk shortly about paranormal stuff that happened to me age 4, age 12, age 16, age 32. But I was never into the paranormal side at all. I had no interest in UFOs until I was 39 years old. And I'll tell you briefly how this all came about. I mean, I was a Comic-Con, Famous Monsters of Filmland fan, watched every black and white B movie of the 50s. I was a horror fan, and, any, altered states, consciousness, I had no interest in that stuff. No interest in Ouija boards, witchcraft, really nothing in that area, and zero interest in UFOs. But I think it's extremely interesting. And in my opinion, it's fate, F-A-T-E. It's fate that my interest started exactly 20 years ago in the summer of 96. I basically wanted to write a sci-fi novel on, like a disaster novel. So I picked the Mayan calendar and I started my research on end-time prophecy. And that started 20 years ago. That I wrote 3 books in the area of, and then novels of, end-time prophecy, asteroid strikes, that type of stuff. But from that, I kept reading about star people, sky people, flying shields, people from somewhere else that gave knowledge to these ancient cultures. So I said, you know what, I'm going to join MUFON and learn about UFOs. Well, that was 18 years ago, in 98, that I joined MUFON. And then 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, I said I'm going to look into demonology because the alien abduction just never added up to me. And also the ancient alien theory, even though I wrote a book on it, never added up because I don't believe that Captain Kirk and the Enterprise would be quarrying stone to build these sites. It makes zero sense to me. So, so I came a full circle, basically. I went from end-time prophecy to UFOs to demonology, which has really got me back going to the Catholic Church. I go every Sunday now. I would consider myself a reborn Christian since November, since Thanksgiving, because of a demonic attack upon me. So, if Satan's so smart, he's a fool, because what he does is he either pushes you back to your roots and your religion, or he takes you. And he ain't getting me, and he didn't get me, and that's going to be the story I'm going to tell you about, and it is 1,000% true. And, the weird thing that's happening right now is very few people believe me. I'm finding either they don't believe me or they think you did something wrong to bring on a demonic attack, or you find that the UFO field is highly atheistic, and they don't want to hear anything about religion. You don't have to call it angels and demons. You don't have to say Jesus and Satan. I even say in the opening of my book, The UFOlogist, I want to call these things malevolent, interdimensional entities, because there are good ones and there are bad ones. You can name them whatever you want. The Muslims name them the jinn. We call them demons. They are malevolent, interdimensional entities. And I've read about 60 books in less than a year, and I think I'm pretty well versed on demonology, exorcism, and I keep coming across why I 100% believe in UFOs. Let me say this first. There's life in space. They have been here. But when you see the craft and you see the explorer ambassador from space who's coming here out of curiosity, observation, that is a totally different scenario than when you get into the abduction scenario, which when you get into the altered states and it's in your mind, and that to me is totally separate from the UFO explorer that we see. We get them on radar, sonar, pictures, a lot of great cases, like the Battle of L.A. We fired on it, and I want to make that distinction. I wrote 3 books on UFOs, 3 books on end-time prophecy. One book, it's really on demonology with a UFO twist to it to explain ancient alien theory and the alien abduction and this whole hybrid thing. So that's my opening. I'm going to tell you the story, and if you don't have any other questions, I'll get right into it.
You get right into it. This is all about you tonight, my friend, because you forewarned me the last time we talked that you had an amazing paranormal story that eventually tied into UFOs, and I said I would give you the floor, and you just run with it.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I found with this whole thing is that and I think this is very true, and I didn't say this, I think it was Voltaire or somebody, that Nietzsche said this, when you look into the dark side looks into you. It's almost like it's something we're not supposed to know about. And it's also, I think, part of why you can never put your finger on the UFO phenomenon. You could never explain it. In my book, The Case for UFOs, I list 8 or 9 different explanations of what the UFO field could be. Time travelers, demons, aliens from space, crypto-terrestrials, interdimensional, ultra-terrestrials. And I can make a case for every one of those, and I can make a case for why each one of those is not it either. So it's a crazy field. You can never explain it, and I can tell you right now, Dave, after 20 years of research, I believe I'm one of the most knowledgeable people in the field in this, but I'm completely confused. You cannot explain this thing. So what I'm going to do is tell you the best that I can as to what happened to me and research and why I believe what I believe. So the funny thing is, we started a TV show in Pittsburgh 2.5 years ago. The West Virginia State Director and myself. It's called UFOs Over Pittsburgh, and it's a half-hour talk show. It airs only in Pittsburgh on community TV. We've done 41 episodes, and the West Virginia guy said to me, John, we did the first episode on abductions with a person from the MUFON abduction team, George Medich. He used to pitch for the Pirates and the Yankees, George Doc Medich. He's one of my investigators. And we talked about abductions, and Fred kept saying, it doesn't make any sense. Why would you have to abduct people for hundreds of years? Why can't they get enough DNA? It doesn't make sense. And, I never really looked at the abduction side because I was always the, extraterrestrial hypothesis person. Nuts and bolts, MUFON, they come from space. And, there's plenty of good cases. There's plenty of pictures and descriptions of craft, so they have to be from space. Well, I never really looked at the abduction, so I said, I'm going to now research the abductions. And as I started looking at them, I saw in my mind what appeared to be demonology. This abduction thing does not make sense. So as I started researching it, what you find out is 30% of people have had a paranormal experience, 14% of people have seen a UFO, and 2.7% of people have believe they've been abducted. And those are what the polls tell you whenever they run a poll. And one of the first books that I read, which was a really good book, was called Deliver Us from Evil by Ralph Sarchie. So I'm going to give you what I learned first, then I'm going to go into what happened to me. And it's absolutely unbelievable. But I'm reading it. Ralph Sarchie was the guy, there was a movie, Deliver Us from Evil, like 3 years ago. He was the cop in the Bronx, and he got involved with some demonic paranormal cases. But in reading it, I found out a whole bunch of stuff I didn't know. Ghosts are basically human spirits. They have unfinished business. They're not very powerful. They can move real small objects. They're really here to make a last appearance and to move on, or if they can't move on, they basically stay here. But you can't exorcise a ghost. You can't bring the priest in. You can bring the Pope in, and a ghost doesn't have to leave. Ghosts have free will because they're human spirits, and we all have free will. The next group of entity is called an elemental. These are spirits that you can conjure up from nature or animals. This is what white witches do. Wiccans call upon elementals. They are not human spirits. Then you got your inhuman spirits. Those are angels and demons. Black witches call upon them. They're basically demonic entities. Sometimes they can materialize as full beings. Sometimes they're missing. You only see the bust and the body. They're missing legs, that type of, something's usually missing. But what you find, and I'll get into the different levels of demons and devils can appear in full form. And there's not only one devil, there are multiple. Another things I didn't know. So what I did, and apparently nobody has ever done this, is from all my knowledge and reading, I put a slide together that I now give presentations on this, at conferences, and I'm going to be speaking about it next weekend in Philly. You'll get the whole presentation, PowerPoints, pictures, everything. But I compared the markers or signs of demonic possession with alien abduction. And I've listed about 60 things that happen, like the room gets cold, you see an orb, something's poking you, you see a creature. So I listed them all. And what you find is about 60% of the markers overlap between the alien abduction and the demonic possession. So I'm not going to run through them all. They're in my book. I'm going to do them at the presentation. And about 40% of these signs of the abduction demonic happen to me or my kids. And that's what we're going to get into shortly. But in my reading, it's funny how years ago, I almost wanted to ask a priest. I remember going to a show and there was a priest sitting next to me. I wanted to lean over and say to him, can you explain to me what an archangel is? Like, I know there's guardian angels, but what the heck is this archangel? And what's a cherubim? I didn't know any of this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a shame. I'm embarrassed to say I went to the Catholic stuff up through sixth grade, communion, confession, all of that stuff, confirmation. I don't know any of this stuff, and I'm Italian. That's embarrassing. Catholic. So, what you find out is there's a hierarchy to the angels and there's a hierarchy to the fallen angels. Basically, you got three groups of angels, and each group is more powerful. Your top most powerful is this, the most powerful below God would be the seraphim. That's what Lucifer was, pure light, right below God, the next level. He's the Mr. Spock of the Enterprise. The cherubim is next. They guard the gates of heaven. The thrones carry out God's orders. The next group are the dominions. They regulate the angels. Virtues perform miracles. Powers combat the fallen angels. I don't know what they did before they fell, but now they combat them. The bottom group of three is principalities who guard against evil, archangels who command God's army, and angels who basically are human guardians. Now, the thing is, and this is what I didn't know, was the demonic have 9 levels also. So humans are level 10, animals are level 11. So angels and demons, there are 9 levels. And you got basically the same 3 there. The top, though, the seraphim, cherubim, thrones, all of those are devils. I never knew that. I thought the devil was one guy, Lucifer, who became Satan. He's the devil. Nope. That whole top level of 3 different groups are all devils, extremely powerful. They're basically the supervisors, the manipulators. The next 6 levels are called demons. The dominions, virtues, powers, principalities, archangels, angels. Those are demons. So what happens when you get a demonic, you get the ghosts, when you get these ghost hunters and you get people that go to cemeteries and you get mediums and you get all of that stuff going on, but you never really know who you're communicating with. And that's the scary part, because these fallen angels pretend to be relatives, and they can trick you. And once you invite them in, they are in. You cannot communicate with them when you have a demonic entity. It's different when it's a ghost. And a lot of the ghost stuff, the ghost hunting, that's all real, and you can communicate, and some people do. But you always run the risk that you're going to run into a fallen angel, or it has been shadowing you, waiting for the opportunity. And I'll give you a perfect example. I'm the Rotary Club president, and I go to a Rotary meeting, and I speak at all the Rotary groups here about UFOs. So one of the girls comes up to me and says, "Oh, you want to talk to our group again?" And I said, "Yeah," but I said, this year I'm doing demonology. And she said, "Sit down." And this happens, with UFOs. You get this, anybody, could be a CEO. "Oh, you do UFOs? Sit down. Let me tell you what happened." Her and her boyfriend sit me down for about 40 minutes, and they start telling me their story. That the girl says, "John, my mother appeared to me in the house. She was covered in blood, saying, I don't remember what the girl's name was. Sue, help me." And the girl says, "Mom, come on in." Well, now they can't get the thing out. She thought it was her dead mother. Well, now when they go to bed at night, they see like fingers come over the top of the door with nails. They see the bloody woman. She's harassing them. The boyfriend says there are shadow people in his room. They try to climb on top of the bed and get in him. I believe he is actually attached, or they're in him. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that is my opinion from the, just talking to these people. But that's a perfect example of why you can't play with this. And you, like I said, when you look into the dark side now notices you and looks back, and you get a reaction. So basically what happens when this stuff happens, you're dealing with that fallen angel, the guardian angel, the fallen one. That's the one that does the infestation, all the noises in the house. When it moves up to the archangels, the fallen archangels, that's the jinn. That's when in Islam they call them the jinn. That's the level of oppression and attacks. When the physical attacks, the biting, the scratching, the poking, that is a next level up fallen angel. When it gets to the possession, where it actually goes in you and suppresses your soul and enters your mind and your brain and starts to take over, that is the principalities and the powers. And there have been cases where actual exorcisms have been performed, and it has been the top level of the devils. Even, I think it was in Malachi Martin's book, Hostage to the Devil, that one of the exorcisms he did, the person, inside the person said it was Lucifer, it was Satan himself, or it was one of the other high-level devils. But usually they don't do the possession. That's done at level 6 and 7. So that's really what you're dealing with. And I didn't know any of this, Then I start questioning myself as to, well, why has this always followed me? Like, it wasn't just 1999. It wasn't just last year. This has followed me my entire life. So then you read about generational sins. And what I've read in a number of books is that the sins of the parents can be passed down to 3 or 4 generations. And if you don't break the chain, they can own that family line. And that's a scary thing. They pick out one person. There's me, my brother, and my sister. Well, apparently they picked me out, And there's a storyline there with my father and some things he did, the time he served in prison and why he's there and other things he got away with. But, and I think that's what it's from. And then there could be some stuff with my grandparents, too. That's all in my book. But the funny thing is, this has happened to my kids, too. Not my nephews, not my nieces, not my brother and sister's kids, my kids and me. So I believe this is a generational sin, and I've told my kids, I'm going to break it one way or another. This is ending here with me in this house, because it's followed me now really from 4 of the 5 different homes that I've lived in. So then you find out that there's natural things, so how does this stuff happen? So there's natural things, and that's whatever science can explain. Those are the laws of nature, and that's natural. Well, then there's a word I started coming across called preternatural or preternatural. I think it's called preternatural. These are unnatural acts like levitating, transforming, conjuring up. Those are things that are done by the fallen angels, by the dark side, and nobody ever uses that word. That is the word that should be used, not supernatural, preternatural. That's done by the dark side. Paranormal means anything that's unexplained by science. So it's all paranormal. UFOs are paranormal, Bigfoot's paranormal, ghosts are paranormal. But when you say supernatural, and you can look it up, supernatural is basically the good things, the miracles performed by God or his angels. So supernatural is good, preternatural is not good, and that's the correct terminology, which I had never heard of that, So, then I segued into exorcism, because I have to know everything. I have to be a subject matter expert. Exorcism basically was authorized in 1614. But Jesus performed exorcisms, and actually baptism that John the Baptist was doing was a form of exorcism. One of the interesting things I came across, and I've come across this in a lot of areas in ufology, is that things change over time. Prior to 1990, there were only 6 exorcisms a year done around the world, right? And it's the bishop that authorizes an exorcism. It doesn't go to the Vatican, but the Vatican gets a report on it. They actually get 2 copies of a transcript that you have to fill out. The priest does. From 1990 on, there's been 1,300 exorcisms a year. Think about that. We went from 6 to 1,300 a year. And, I can get into a lot of things that changed, like the cattle mutilations, serial killers, and I do that in my presentation and in my book. Something changed 25, 35 years ago, very different than what it was at the turn of the century. Some people say, well, it's just the Internet. 1990, Internet, everything got out there. People are seeing it and reporting it. But I think the exorcism thing was always reported through the church to the Vatican. I know it was. But a huge increase in this demonic. One of the things that happened was the St. Michael prayer was eliminated in 1968 with Vatican II. Also, the church also didn't tell the truth with the Fatima sighting and the third prophecy. They held Vatican II in Vatican I in 1959. Because they expected something to happen in 1960. Nothing happened because they didn't tell us the truth about that prophecy. But there's usually some sort of invitation. Tarot cards, Ouija boards, occult practices, you always find something that happens. And, maybe for me it was my love of sci-fi, horror movies. I got 600 DVDs and 500 of them are horror sci-fi movies. I love the whole genre. And I really pulled away from the church, which I'll get into shortly. You should never provoke or communicate with them. So people say, well, what do you do if you hear voices and something? And what I've read, and I've read this in a number of books, is you have to test it. Once you open up that line of communication, and I'll give you another example. Every 3 weeks I go to Buffalo Wild Wings and I watch the UFC fight. So they get crowded. I actually got to go there at 8:30 to get a 10 o'clock table for the fight. So I got my table. The place is packed. There's people standing all on the sides. This, I'd say maybe 26, 27-year-old kid comes walking up, and I'm at a table of 4, and it's just me. And he goes, can I sit there? And I said, yeah, go ahead. You can watch the fight. And he says to me, I recognize you. And I said, well, I'm in the Hangar 1 TV show. I run the UFO conference. And he goes, yeah, I saw you on TV. And he goes, let me tell you what happened with me. He starts describing something. And I said to him, you realize what you're telling me is not ET. You're talking about a demonic possession, a demonic encounter. And the kids never realized that. I'm telling you, Dave, his face turned whiter than the white he was. His jaw dropped, and he got scared. And I said to him, you're not communicating with this, are you? And he goes, yeah, actually I am. And he says, but it's good. And I said, don't tell me you got shadow people in your room and it's good. And he goes, yeah. He goes, there's two. There's a big one and then there's a shorter one. And he says the smaller one is like pushing the big one away and pushing it out of my room, and then the smaller one stays behind, and I communicate with it. And he says it communicates in my head. I know I hear it in my head, but it's not, actually it's not making any sound. And I said to him, do you realize that entity, that shadow person, is claiming you? That's why he's pushing the bigger one away. I'm telling you, I scared the crap out of this kid. He turned, his whole face flushed, and I'm trying to help him to understand. He goes, no, but it has helped me. It's told me stuff. I said, it's in your head now. This thing's attached to you. You got to go to the church now. You got to get this thing unattached. So the kid says to me, he looks up, he sees his friends on the other side of the bar across the room. He goes, oh, my friends are here. See ya. And he just walked away. So I know I lost that one. But, this is the type of stuff that happens. And so you don't communicate with them. And the thing I know from reading the books is what the fallen and the malevolent can't do is say that they love God or they love Jesus or whoever your faith worships. For me, it's Catholic, so it's Jesus. So if something started talking to me tonight, I would say to it, it says, oh, John, this is your father. I would say, oh, yeah? Say you love Jesus Christ. And if it can't say it, then it's not a ghost. It's a demonic entity. And that's what they should be showing you on these shows but they don't want to do that because of the religious side. And incredibly, anything religious turns people off. I'm actually stunned at the stuff I've experienced over the last year. But if you want to be on the safe side, you say to the thing, say you love God, say you love Jesus Christ. If it can't say it, it's not a ghost. That is one of the most important things you need to know. Somehow these fallen entities can see unconfessed sins, which is one of the reasons, my kids, they both go to these New Age churches with the big screens and the bands, and it's fun. I call it my religious entertainment. And they say to me, Dad, why do you go to Catholic? It's ritual. You stand up, you sit down, you kneel. You stand up, you sit down, you kneel, and you chant. And I said, there's really 3 reasons. One, Catholic goes right back to Jesus, so that's an original faith. 2, they believe in exorcism, which is extremely important because I now know 100% that this demonic malevolence is real, just as your guardian angel is real, but they believe in exorcism and they believe in confession. A lot of these other churches you go to, you don't have to say confession. The Catholic Church, you have to. And the reason it's important because every exorcism, that book I've ever read, any case history I've ever read, the person that's possessed somehow has the ability to see the unconfessed sins in the people in the room that are helping the priest. A priest will bring 2 or 3 people in with him. They'll move all the rug, the furniture. They'll leave basically the bed and the chair, because these entities can throw the furniture. They can burst it into flames, and I'll tell you about what happened here. We'll get to that. But that's what's done during an exorcism. But somehow they can but I'm told they can't read your mind, but they can see something in you, and they know exactly the sins you committed. But if you go to confession, they cannot see that, because you've asked for help and you've asked for forgiveness and you regretted what you had done. Another thing I've read is they can take over your body but not your soul. I'm not 100% certain on that. I've read books where it's gone either way. Some religious theology people, priests, say they can take only your body, your soul belongs to God. Other people have said no. That if you renounce God, if you do certain things, they can take your soul also. So that's one that, I haven't come to a conclusion, but it certainly appears to me that they can take your soul also, which, is why you don't communicate with them. You don't invite them in. You ask them the questions I just told you. One of the things is, if you look at the medical community and psychologists, psychiatrists, right away they think you have a mental problem, you need drugs, and there's something mentally wrong with you. And it's funny when you read their books and how they describe, if we can only find that place in the brain that controls this. Well, I got news for you. We're half animal and we're half angel, basically. And the animal part of us is just a little smarter ape, is what it is. The higher thinking, the part of your brain that does all of that is your soul. When your soul enters your body, you now become this other type of person that can reason and have the higher thinking and all of that. Otherwise, you're just that animal that's a little smarter than an ape is. And that's why when you deal with the medical community, and the Vatican actually says this, before they do an exorcism, they want a psychiatric evaluation on the person, because if the medication doesn't work for schizophrenia or whatever they give you, then the Vatican moves to the exorcism. So they're covering themselves because of cases where people got injured, people died, the exorcism hasn't been done right. They want a medical examination before they move into the exorcism. But the point they make is that a lot of the people that are heavily medicated with psychiatric problems and don't get better probably need an exorcism. Now, isn't that an interesting thought? How many people that are locked away and right. They're not ill, right? It's funny.
John, I just want to remind you, we got about 4 minutes before we got to go to break here.
Okay, let me get through all of this history, and then we'll move after the break. One of the things I did, though, was I compared the demonic to the alien abduction, but I recently read about near-death experience. I have that in my book, but I also read some more on that. It's and this is very, very powerful, that when you compare them, the near-death experience, these are all altered states, all three of those, but the near-death experience seems to take place in a higher realm, which is probably heaven. And the author, Kenneth Ring, in the book I read, said that the alien abduction, and I say the demonic, takes place in a separate dimension, which I believe is closer to what we would call hell. So when you do the comparison here, they all result. There's a good thing that comes out of it, is that you become more self-aware. You seem to become more evolved after it happens, but they seem to take place in different dimensions. Near-death experiences, always positive. Abductions and demonic are negative, and I could run through the different types, but I'm not going to do that here. You'll have to come to my presentation, but they are polar opposites. Near-death experience, positive. Alien abduction, demonic attack are negative. The other thing I looked at, too, is, like I said, the UFO thing's real, but this whole hybrid thing, which was the reason I got looking into this a couple of years ago, the abduction. It doesn't make sense that aliens from space would come here and try to do this hybrid thing for hundreds of years, first of all, they could get enough DNA from 10, 12 people and clone it. But when you really read about our biology and our DNA, we're 96% similar to chimps. We cannot reproduce with a chimp or an ape, even though they're that close. And there's a 1% difference between humans, but there's a 4% difference between chimps and humans. So the chances of an ET from another planet having similar DNA is absolutely zero. There is only 3 ways that this hybrid thing actually works. The only 3 ways they can work is that it's us coming back from the future, they reside here on Earth, like the hollow Earth theory, or they've always been here and they've mated with us in the past, and it's the Nephilim, which is the fallen angels. So if that's perfect timing for your break, after that I will go into my experiences.
I love it. Thank you for the breakdown and the study there. I learned a lot tonight. I know our audience did as well. I much appreciate you going through that. We got about 30 seconds left. I do want to remind everyone, John Ventre is our guest tonight. His latest book, The UFOlogist, can be found on his website, MUFONPA.com, as well as Amazon. And if you're on the East Coast, in Philadelphia, the weekend before Halloween, the Philly Paracon that John runs Friday and Saturday night, that would be, looking at my calendar, the 28th and 29th, is a great conference to go to. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I'm your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with UFOcop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Revealette Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, revealetteR&R.wix.com/Revealette_R&R.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio, hour number 2, tonight with John Ventre. Before we bring John back on, I do want to remind you, if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, go to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for the SOR Space Travelers tonight, and it's a good one. Erudite is the password. Erudite. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, and if someone who isn't a space traveler asks you what's it's for, all you have to do is say, exactly. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can join up for the SOR Space Travelers Club, as it is a very important club. With that, your name gets put into private group interviews, private monthly access into our website. As well, your name gets put into private monthly draws. You can read up on our latest blogs. Check out the SOR Space Wire by our news director, Eric Markham. Mike Schmidt's in the house tonight. He runs the SOR Sightlines Report. He's waiting for your reports if you've seen anything weird, strange, or just really supernatural. Fill it out today. John Ventre is our guest tonight. Once again, he is the author of the book, The UFOlogist. He is part of MUFON as a state director for Pennsylvania. He also runs the Philly Paracon, which is happening the weekend of October 28th. John, welcome back.
Thanks for bringing me back.
Absolutely. One of the things that I really enjoy about this topic, and we've talked about it so much on Spaced Out Radio, is the tie-in between the paranormal and the ufological. Why do you think a lot of researchers out there, John, absolutely tend to shy away from any correlation between the two?
Yeah, well, that is a great question, and I'm going to tell you the exact answer why. And this has been told to me by a number of big-name people, and I won't repeat their names, but they don't. Here's what I found out. Many, many people have had similar things happen to them that I'm going to tell you happened to me. They're big names in the UFO field. They don't mention the demonic side because no one is interested. Bringing up religion is like people shut down, and they will not buy your books. That is the reason. And you know what I said? You know what? I'm writing this book. It's basically demonology, hauntings, all the stuff I'm telling you about, but it's the truth, and people need to know. And, for the next year or so, all I'm going to talk about on these shows is not the UFO side that I wrote 3 books on, is this book on demonology, because I've never seen a UFO. I have firsthand experience with this, and I know this is real. And it changes, for me, the alien abduction side. Like I said, it doesn't change the UFO, the space traveler, the explorer, the pictures, all this history we have. It changes what I always was skeptical about with the alien abduction, that I believe when you go into an altered state, you're dealing with angels and fallen angels. But they don't talk about it because nobody's interested in demonology.
It still seems to me that it is behooving, if I could use that word, of any researcher to eliminate evidence, eliminate any correlation without looking into it. Because I think the biggest problem in this field, what I have seen, is that we use the word science a little too much in this field. And when we use the word science, we're not really looking into things scientifically. We're using it to protect our own opinions of what we believe is true and what we believe isn't true. And I've seen it in the paranormal, I've seen it in the cryptid world with Bigfoot, and in the UFO studies as well. And I think that's dangerous because we don't know what we're talking about. There is no 100% concrete proof. And the only thing that I see some very good researchers doing is shooting themselves in the foot because mentally they cannot come around to the idea that there is some connection between the two.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we also know that what science does, and particularly the psychiatric side of the medical community, is what they can't explain, they don't explain, and they say doesn't exist. I have read so many books recently where you get the psychiatric view of the alien abduction, the demonic. Every single one of them, first of all, says you need medication, there's something wrong with you. And number 2 says it's something in your brain that they're going to eventually end up figuring out. Absolutely will not acknowledge that you have a soul, that there are angels and fallen angels, and these are the influences, and that there's something that's actually residing in your brain and spinal column that gives you this higher thought, gives you the abilities that we have. And without it, we're only slightly better than, we're Cro-Magnon without that soul in us. But they dance around it because they will not go into religion. They will not do it.
How scary has some of these experiences for you been?
Well, they ramped up. And, see, this is why when I look at it, it's fun. I just played racquetball last night, and I was talking to one of the guys, and we walked out to the cars. He was parked next to me, and he sees a cross hanging in my car, and he goes, "You're the UFO guy. What are you doing with a cross?" And I said, "Let me tell you something." So, this thing, and it was good, actually. It pushed me back to the church. But it's why well, the thing the guy said to me was, "What did you do wrong?" Once I started telling him about this demonic attack last year. And, I didn't do anything wrong. It goes back to what I believe is a generational sin or curse. So real quickly, let me go through my early years. Basically, 4 years old, living in Brooklyn. I clearly remember laying in bed, something grabbed my feet. I screamed, the door opened, mother, father, brother was standing there. I remember that like it happened yesterday. 1969, I'm 12 years old. For about 4 nights in a row, I have this out-of-body experience. I'm floating over the neighborhood. Each night I go further and further. I can't explain it. I'm in some sort of altered state. I'm 12 years old. Can't wait to go to bed. Also, around that same time, I think it was actually younger, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, I used to have this recurring dream of standing in a doorway, leaning against the frame of the door. There was a brown beige wall, a brick wall next to me, looking out at a cemetery. The crazy thing happened when I got transferred to Pittsburgh in 1997 by UPS, and in the house I'm in right now, I go to the back door, I open it, there is the view I had as an 8, 9, 10-year-old. The cemetery, which is about 100 yards from me, the beige brick wall. I bought this house, and, you know, it's funny, I said, I bet I never leave this house. And I actually had 2 transfers come through at UPS that fell through, and I spent 15 years here from 40 to 55, which never happens because they transfer you every 3 to 5 years. So I knew what I saw in that dream. I was buying this house, and I wasn't leaving this house. 1971, I'm 14 years old. My grandmother passes away. I hear her voice that night in the hallway, like a loud female moan, like in pain. I know that was her soul leaving the body before it died. A couple hours later, after I heard that, we got a call from the hospital. She passed away. 1973, I'm 16 years old. I have an absolute lucid dream. Again, this is in an altered state. I fall asleep. I played a doubleheader of softball. I was tired. I laid down, fell asleep. I had this dream. I'm in my yard. I open the cellar door from outside, and instead of the stairs to go down to the cellar door, it's a cave. I go down a couple of levels. I can still see the light of the doorway up above. Something starts coming up after me. I turn. Of course, I'm running in slow motion. This thing is behind me, breathing on me, and I said to myself, John, do not turn around. Whatever this is, I can feel its malevolence. You know, in my head, I'm saying, don't look at its face. Just try to move yourself, move a finger. I moved my finger. I woke up. Dave, I'm telling you, I was drenched in sweat, and my heart rate had to be about 180 beats a minute, you know, and that's one of the markers of these demonic attacks and the alien abduction is waking up covered in sweat and your heart pounding. The weird thing is, you know, and I know that was a dream, but now I realize that was like one of these altered state things, that something was probably in my head. My sister, and she never told me this until recently, that same summer of 1973, she has an Annabelle doll experience in her bedroom. She used to have this like 3-foot-tall, blonde, human-looking doll. She won't tell me what it did, but she says to me, she brought it up recently because I've been telling her my stuff, and she says, John, and I don't know what it did. It walked, it talked, it moved. She took that doll, she threw it away. She will not speak about what happened, but it was at the same time that I had my lucid dream that occurred. The weird thing now is I'm 16 years old. Absolutely nothing happens for the next 16 years. High school, college, marriage, kids, nothing. No paranormal, no noises, absolutely zero. I get to 1988. I'm working in Europe for UPS. I spend Thanksgiving in Germany. My wife was just fuming at me. So I finished the assignment a day early before Christmas on December 20th. I tried to change my flight from December 22nd to the 21st so I can get home for Christmas because she's mad at me. Well, I don't make the plane change because of the cost. The following morning, I find out that was Pan Am Flight 103 that was blew up over Lockerbie, Scotland. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything. That was an almost moment that I got on the wrong flight, that maybe Final destination I wasn't supposed to get on. But what the company does is now we were supposed to move to Europe. We were supposed to live in Madrid 2 years, London 4 years, and then Atlanta. I was supposed to be the head of security for UPS. I turned down the transfer. My wife won't go. They send us to Oklahoma City. It was supposed to be a punishment. I really liked it there, to be honest with you. It was a nice place. What happens in 1990 that I'm there, and this is the start now, it was either end of 89, beginning of 90. Those were the 2 years I was there. But I hear a male voice in the house, and it clearly sounded like an Indian chant. It was in the hallway. And it was an Indian, sounded like a Native American voice, a chant. A few days later, my wife and I watching TV, we hear 3 footsteps upstairs. The kids are in bed. They're 3 and 5. I hear 3 footsteps. Then I hear them louder. I looked at my wife. I said, are the kids up? Then I heard them, you cannot make this sound. Boom, boom, boom. I jump up. I run upstairs. Kids are sound asleep. I check the closets, under the bed, the toy box, nothing. So from there, that was the start of my modern era of what happened. I'm 32 years old, 33 years old at that point. The company transfers me to New Jersey at this point. Wife's unhappy, wants to get closer to Long Island. We get transferred to Northern Jersey. So we moved to this house in New Jersey that I refer to as the Hell House. The day we moved into this house, you could hear the moving boxes in the garage sliding around on the floor. I'd invited my family over, my parents, my father. We were standing there in the den, and my father says, what's that noise? I said, Dad, the moving boxes slide around by themselves in the garage. You can hear it. It's a very distinct sound on concrete of a heavy box sliding around. My daughter, I ended up getting divorced in that house, but my daughter and then later my girlfriend both separately tell me they used to hear a rocking chair in the spare bedroom and a baby crying. Again, one of those signs of the demonic. My sister saw a shadow moving across the ceiling. My girlfriend and I saw the same shadow coming into our bedroom and just sliding across the ceiling. It was the scariest thing you ever want to see. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night. There's a kid standing at the foot of my bed. This is why I think that this portion may have happened in Oklahoma. It looked like a homesteader. He was like a 10-year-old kid. He had blonde hair. I remember the bowl cut. He was wearing a plaid shirt and overalls. He looked a lot like my son. I said to him, Nolan, come on, get in bed. I get up in the morning. I asked my girlfriend where the kids are. She goes, they didn't sleep over last night. I'm telling you, Dave, I was awake, and that was absolutely real. There was somebody standing at my bed that I mistook for my son. My son later tells me that after I moved out and we were getting divorced, he was hearing voices in the wall. He'd lay down at night to sleep. There was a voice in the wall that would say, I'm going to get you. He said one day he was brushing his teeth, and he saw this hairy creature walk down the hallway past the bathroom. He said the cat saw it too. The cat turned, he turned, they both saw it. He said that he jumped over the railing into the living room and he ran out of the house. My daughter also said, besides hearing the crying and the baby and the rocking chair, that one time her and her friends pulled up to the house. She wanted to show them the nice house she used to live in before we got divorced. And she says, Dad, I pull up, every light's on. As soon as we pulled up in front of the house, every light in the house went off, almost like somebody pulled the fuse box. So 97, I moved to Pennsylvania, and I think this is when I started researching the end-time prophecy and writing my sci-fi books. But 99, I think, is hugely, hugely important. And what happened was I joined MUFON in 98. 99, I go to my first UFO symposium, UFO conference, right? I come home, it's 4th of July weekend, and for the next 4 nights, I start having out-of-body experiences. I start having lucid dreams. There is a malevolent presence in my bedroom. I'm waking up every hour. There's something in my bedroom. I'm actually waking up swinging my fist. I hit the headboard. I almost broke my wrist one time. When I swung, I hit the headboard, the beam right on the end. And So I'm above my house. I can see the house. I had these strange dreams. Well, first of all, at the symposium, I met this woman there. This woman comes in, very attractive blonde. She was kind of big on the bottom, but beautiful face, extremely pale, gray, bloodshot eyes. I went up to her at lunchtime. I had lunch with her. We were just talking. The weird thing is, she never returned to the symposium. I was looking for her. I was single at that point, and she never came back. She was there for an hour, had lunch, and I never saw her again at the symposium. And if you talk about a hybrid, this was a hybrid woman that showed up to the conference. But I have these dreams now, and they're absolutely lucid, real dreams. And again, in an altered state, I have a Doberman. He's floating in the air with his legs sticking out horizontally. There's this kid there poking him in the ribs. And I remember it was like you couldn't see anything in the room. It was kind of like a beige, cloudy coloring in the background. This kid is poking my dog. He's like 10 years old. I'm yelling at the kid, "Stop poking my dog," right? But here's the strange part. I wrote down what happened after the dream. What I wrote down was the kid, he looked like a rat boy, his face, his mouth, and his nose, and he had very tight pulled skin. His hair was slicked back, almost looked like Nosferatu, like a vampire, you know? That's what I wrote down. Years later, when I decided to write this and put it in a book, my memory was of a totally different kid. I had to go back to my notes, and I said, wow, that's right. That's what I wrote down. The memory or screen memory, whatever is in my head, or maybe it happened more than once and it came back, is of a kid about 10 years old with straggly hair, looks like hair, implants, just little plugs altered on his head. He had very big eyes. He had extremely big forearms like Popeye, and the elbow was sticking out about 3 inches. This is the 10-year-old kid that I remembered, but not the 10-year-old kid that I wrote down. So, extremely weird dreams, hybrids, out-of-body experience. That's why I'm questioning, is it an alien abduction? I speak to Dr. David Jacobs. He goes, absolutely not, but you're telling me 30 years apart, and it's exactly 30 years from the out-of-body experiences I had in 1969, this time 4 days, but this is absolutely a malevolent thing in my house. And in my mind, I say to myself, why does this happen when I go to my first UFO conference? What is the connection there between UFOs and what I believe now is demonic and not alien abduction? So the other thing I wanted to mention is when I moved to the Pittsburgh area in 97, the house I bought, the one I saw in my dream, the day I move into this house, there's a constant tapping in the wall in the spare bedroom. I remember that summer, and it went on for years. I would lay down, and there would be a constant tapping in the wall. I'd get up, I'd tap the wall, it would stop. You'd wait about 10 seconds, it would start up again. And this was a sound I heard for years, and then it kind of like, I didn't hear it anymore. It was maybe for the first 2 or 3 years that I lived in the house, I would hear this tapping in the wall in the empty bedroom that I had there, the 5th bedroom. So Thanksgiving of 2004, right? My girlfriend's living with me. My kids come out for Thanksgiving because they're still living in Jersey. I'm living in Pittsburgh. And my son points this out to me recently. He said, Dad, all of the major paranormal things that have happened to you has happened at Thanksgiving when the 3 of us are together. And all 3 of us have had these paranormal experiences. So what happens in Thanksgiving of 2004 is we have Thanksgiving, we go to bed, it's around midnight. I hear somebody in the hallway outside the bedroom door. I had closed the bedroom door, right? So in the morning, my girlfriend gets up. She goes to work. She had to work the next day in a furniture store. And I go into the bathroom. There's these 2 huge hand and arm prints on the mirror. And I got a picture of it. It's in my presentation, and it's in my book. From elbow to fingertip, it's 3 inches longer than mine. I measured it. I'm 6 foot. That would make this thing 7 feet. It's got 6 fingers, and all you see on the mirror are the bones. You don't see any flesh. You only see the outline of the 2 bones of the forearm. and the hands are like in an X, like crossing over each other. So I asked my son, what we did was my girlfriend came home, she dusted it with her makeup, and I took a picture of it. So I asked my son, what were you doing outside my bedroom door at midnight? And his immediate reaction was, Dad, I heard you outside my bedroom at midnight. So something was in the hallway there, and it left these imprints on the mirror. And the other thing is, my son would always sleep with the light on. And I finally asked him just recently, Nolan, why do you sleep with a light on, even as a 20-year-old? And he goes, Dad, it was because of all of the paranormal experiences when we were young. He said, I can't sleep unless somebody's with me. He's married now. He doesn't have a light on. But he could not sleep alone, and he has a light on. And right now, at 59, I have a nightlight in my bedroom. After I tell you what else happened, I cannot sleep in my bedroom in pitch black like I used to, but we'll get to that. So now it's September 1st of 2009. I wake up at 5 in the morning, and I've documented all of this over the years. I wake up, my bed sits, I can look right down the hallway. There's somebody standing there. The attic light is on. I have a finished attic, so you just go up the stairs. It's a gym up there. And so it's silhouetted. I see a guy standing there. He's about 7 feet tall. His waist can't be more than 12 inches, extremely long arms and legs, but he's got a square head, like he's got a helmet on. That's why I keep thinking, is it alien or is it demonic, right? It's standing there. So I'm telling you, Dave, I'm awake. I'm rubbing my eyes. I actually crawl to the foot of the bed, so now 20 seconds has gone by. It's standing there frozen. My dog is sleeping in the hallway, the Doberman, right? He doesn't react at all. So I say to myself, I'm stepping over the footboard, and I'm charging down the hallway. I no sooner get that thought, I get another thought in my head that says, don't do that. That's dangerous. You could trip and fall. You want to step off the side of the bed, put the light on, and then go to the doorway. Well, that's what I did. And by the time I put the light on, stepped off the bed, and got back to the doorway, it was gone, and the light was gone. That was on in the attic or shining down from the skylights in the attic. I have no idea. But this thing, whatever it was, it would look like slender. I don't know, it wasn't a shadow man, it wasn't Slender Man wearing a hat and a suit. It was more like Crooked Man, like that British type of paranormal person that you see. I believe that this thing was what was in the house in 2004 that put the handprints, because it was about 7 feet tall, and that's what it needed to be. And I'm telling you, I was 100% awake. So now we get to April 24th of 2010. My kids come over. I'm on the board of directors for juvenile diabetes. We go to the gala. We come home. We go to bed around midnight. My daughter, at about 4 in the morning, bursts into my bedroom screaming, Dad, you're not going to believe what happened. You're not going to believe what happened. She's crying, upset. So she tells me, she goes, I went downstairs to get some water. You didn't have any in the kitchen. I had to go into the basement refrigerator. She says, something is standing behind me. She goes, this thing is evil. It's malevolent. It's breathing on me. The hair on my back and my neck went up. She went upstairs to her bedroom. She laid down, and she goes, Dad, I no sooner laid down, and this thing laid on top of me, a shadow person, and pressed into my entire body. She says I was frozen. I was awake the whole time. I was never sleeping, and it pressed into my body. She said she saw shadow people flying around the ceiling, a shadow man in the doorway. It pulls out of her. She said she sat up and said, what the heck just happened? She laid back down. It happens a second time. They switch places. Now that it's happened, she's frozen. She said, Dad, in her head, it sounded like a crowded room, like 40 different voices. The one standing in the doorway said, when you're done with her, I want to try out the other two, meaning my son and his fiancée in the other room. She wouldn't have made that up, not the wording. She said it pulled out of her, and she said, Dad, I jumped up, ran down the hallway to tell you. So my daughter was attacked by some sort of a shadow being in her bedroom in 2010. We get to Thanksgiving of 2013. My son's over. I have a home theater projector on the ceiling, 9-foot screen, stadium seating. I go to put the Cowboy game on for my son. He goes, Dad, what's that? We look up. something snakes across the ceiling in front of the light on the projector on the ceiling, and you can just see it. It looked like a snake just snaking across the ceiling. This is a minion. This is what your soul looks like. This is a fallen creature, in its invisible form, but it had enough substance that the light on it showed it as it went across the ceiling. That's exactly what that was. So, then I write 2 other books on UFOs. Well, one was Apophis 2029. That's a disaster book. And The Alternative History of Mankind, which supported ancient alien theory. Kind of feeling guilty about both of those because they were kind of blasphemous towards religion, because I talked about the engineering of humans, and even the other book was really a disaster story. So now I get into the good stuff. If that wasn't good enough, I get into the good stuff. It's June 6th of 2014, my 20th anniversary of my divorce from 1994. Something shows up in my house. I go upstairs. I always open the attic door, let the cool air in at night, and I walk down the hallway, and there's this smell of, to me, initially I thought it was like the dog did his business upstairs, and then as I was smelling it, I said, you know what, this smells more like a dead animal, a rotting animal or something, and it's in the bathroom, and it's in the hallway. So what I do is I put the fan on in the bathroom, I close the door. I go downstairs, I'm watching a baseball game. My dog comes over. He's a 108-pound Doberman, and he's an extremely good guard dog. He's actually bit me a few times. He's such an aggressive dog. All of a sudden, on the wall in my den, my theater room, there's a bang. I'm telling you, Dave, I couldn't make this noise. It was so loud. It was like a sonic boom on the wall. Boom! The picture on the wall flips up. I have 2 Indian headdresses on both sides of the picture. The feathers on the headdress both blow to the side. When the noise happened, the dog, he looked and I looked. His head and my head turned at exactly the same time, so we both heard it. What also happened then, as I go upstairs and I'm going to bed, the dog all of a sudden, he sleeps like there's a chair at the foot of the bed. He gets off of it. He goes down the hallway, looks up the attic stairs. He goes ballistic, like he sees something up there. There's a big difference between his bark from just seeing somebody out down the street or the UPS guy coming to the door. He goes ballistic. So I go upstairs, and there's nothing there. So I go to bed. I put the news on, the Weather Channel, and I can see the dog. I could see his head, and in my bathroom, boom, the loudest noise you ever want to hear. Again, the dog turns, I turn. We both hear it. Also, starting in June of 14, there's a family of cardinals that are flying into my windows. It started on that day, June 7th it started, 2014. For 22 months, these birds during the winter and night were flying into my windows. What also happens is I meet this woman online, and this was Fate, I think, on a dating site, and I tell her what's happening, and she goes, John, I'm coming over. This has happened to me when I was younger and in college. This woman comes over. She knows all the prayers. St. Michael brings her own holy water, blesses the house. So it's a few weeks later, and the dog, again, it's that same thing. All of a sudden, he goes in the hallway, he runs down to the front door and goes ballistic, barking, right? Now, the house has been blessed by this woman at this point. I go downstairs to the front door. Outside, you hear that loud boom, like a sonic boom. Boom! I actually jumped back. It was so loud. The following morning, I have an email from my neighbor, John, did you hear that last night at 10:33 p.m.? It sounded like we thought a car hit a telephone pole or a deer ran into our garage door. So the woman heard it also next door. The neighbors heard it. I think it was this entity, this demonic fallen entity that couldn't get back into the house because of the holy water and the fact that it was blessed. So now I'm doing all my research. It jumps from June of 2014 to Thanksgiving of 2015. Again, it's Thanksgiving. Like my son said, there's like 4 instances here on Thanksgiving. My daughter's married, living in North Carolina. So she's coming up 5 nights for Thanksgiving. I assume she's staying here with me, but my son moved here the year prior, so it's Monday of Thanksgiving week. As far as I know, my daughter's coming to stay at my house at least the first 2 nights. I go to bed, my daughter's bedroom door is wide open. I keep all the bedroom doors closed. I walk down the hall, I close it. Tuesday night, I go upstairs to go to bed. I look down the hallway. Her door is open again. I've lived here 19 years. Those doors don't open on their own. It's open again. And I think that was an invitation telling me they're waiting for my daughter to show up, like in 2010. So my daughter then tells me Wednesday morning, Dad, I'm not staying with you. I'm staying at Nolan's. I was a little annoyed, like you're coming up 5 nights, you're not staying here. And it was her guardian angel protecting her. I start going to bed Wednesday night. I walk into, all the noises start now. That tapping that I used to hear on the wall, it's constant in the house. That whole week started that Monday. Constant tapping on the wall. Don't matter what room I'm in. Bathroom, bedroom, living room, there's this constant tapping on the wall. As I go into my bedroom each night, Wednesday night, Thanksgiving night, Thursday night, Friday night, something is sticking me in my leg like with a pin or sewing needle. I walk in and something hits me in my thigh and I jump. One night I lay down and something stabs me in my scalp. I sit up and I said, what the heck was that? I don't feel a bite or anything, a sting. I lay back down. It was twice as hard, like somebody took their nail and just shoved it into my forehead. I got up. I looked in the mirror. There's nothing there. The next day, I'm reading my books on demonology, on exorcism, trying to figure out what's going on here. In the dining room, I hear the loudest scratching you ever want to hear. You know, my logical mind is saying, well, there's got to be a squirrel in the wall. This is so loud. This thing's coming through the wall. 4 times I get up and walk into the dining room, and I'm looking behind the cabinet. My dog walks right past me as I'm hearing the scratching sounds. He doesn't hear it. That tells me this is now telepathic. When he walked past me, I said, this is those entities putting this in your head, that there's this scratching sound that's happening, right? So now, for weeks now, we're into December. Every night I lay down, there's these pinging sounds, taps in different corners of the room. It would tap to the left, it would tap to the right. I'm talking loud taps like knuckles hitting a wall. I'll hear sliding noises in the ceiling like you're dragging a body. There'll be a loud boom. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, at like 6 a.m., and as soon as the sun comes out, I hear this boom in the attic like something is fleeing. It's almost like a vampire that's got to get out of your house before the sun comes up. It's the weirdest stuff you ever want to see. Then what happens is I go, this is into December now, I go to bed, I lay down, all the noises, all the sounds, and I'm telling you, Dave, that sliding sound in the ceiling bangs so loud in the room that it's like a sonic boom, and then this loud creaking sound in the corner. I never heard. It's like crushing a soda can, like somebody just crushed the corner of the wall. I sit up and I do what the woman did and what she told me to do. I said, I'm covered in the blood of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ protects me. Jesus Christ commands you to leave this house. Go back to where you came from. You have no place in this house. You were never invited. It stops. I lay down. Of course, I can't sleep, so it's like 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later. I open my eyes. The room is pitch black. I mean, there was a moon out with moonlight coming in, and at night your eyes adjust. You can see something. I sit up in bed, and I look around. I say, I don't see anything. I mean, I am in absolute pitch blackness right now. It starts again. I hear the pinging, I hear the banging, the loud booms, the sliding in the ceiling, the loud noises, and now the creak in the corner of the ceiling was twice as loud. I'm telling you, you cannot create these sounds. They are so loud. And the weird thing is, the dog is not reacting to any of this. This is that telepathic message thing that they put out there that only the victim can hear. I'm afraid at this point. And even though a couple of times I got up and called it out and said, show yourself, because I do kickboxing, and if this thing shows itself as a demon or gargoyle, I'm going to hit it so hard I'm sending it back to hell, right? You shouldn't do that, though. You can't communicate. You can't call it out. much more powerful than you. And the funny thing is, I get chills when I hear it in the back of my head and down my spine. I believe my soul is afraid of whatever it is. I'm kind of angry wanting it to show itself, but internally I'm getting chills, and I know that the inner part of me, my soul, is afraid of whatever this is. So now what I do is I again say those words about Jesus Christ, all of that, but I add to it, and I say that if you disobey Jesus Christ, you will go to the lake of fire now instead of the end of days. And Dave, I swear to God to you, as soon as I said that, all the noises stopped, and for about 2 seconds, I could see a veil of blackness just rise. And what happened was the light caught my eyes from the windows. The moonlight came in, and for about 2 seconds, I could just see this black wall, this black screen going up, and I could now see in the dark the way it was. So that was pretty much what I think ended the demonic entity, but there is still some sort of poltergeist that stayed in the house, or a minion or something that stayed behind. I also, when this was going on, I would see these 3 shadows, black shadows. I have a nightlight on in my room now. You know, after that happened, I put a nightlight on the ceiling. In counterclockwise, flying around my ceiling fan were these 3 shadows. A couple of days later, about a week later after that happened, I'm letting the dog out in the morning. I go through the basement to let him out the back door. All of a sudden, before I got to the door, a hand is on my head. Dave, I'm telling you, this hand was twice the size of mine. The fingers had to be 14 inches long, and they were spongy, like they weren't fully formed, like they were materializing. And right across my forehead and the top of my head, I feel a hand go right across my head. I jumped, and I looked up, and I said, you can't do that. You know, when it gets to contact, you know, noises are one thing, but physical contact, that takes you into a different level. And it's like I said, you can't do that. So then I'm thinking about it. There's no more noises at this point. And I said, you know, John, that wasn't negative. I think what that was the guardian angel, whatever the good guys are. It was almost like a blessing, like the way you'd put your hand across a kid's head, the way you'd put your hand across the dog to pet its head. That was exactly what it was. I believe at that point, Dave, I had stood in the presence of angels and demons, couldn't see them, heard them, saw the effects. I was able, because I called upon Jesus, I was able to drive these things out of my house. And it's funny, all the things I've read and all these different books that people have encountered the demonic, they never call upon Jesus for his help. And that is the only thing you have to do. And I remembered what this woman told me. She said, John, he that is within you is more powerful than he that is without. All you have to do is believe and ask for help, and you will get that help. But you have to believe. And I had not been in a church since my wife filed for divorce in 1992, so it was almost 25 years. And Dave, I wrote these books, you know, and they were talking about genetic engineering and aliens and ancient alien theory. I don't think I had one thought of God, religion. I would never say prayers, never gone to a church. But what it did was it absolutely pushed me right back to religion, and I'm very happy for that. One of the other things that happened, and this is this whatever this poltergeist or whatever was still in the house, and I documented this, March 7th of 2016. The Damien TV series comes on. That's the Omen story, right? It's that new TV series that came on.
Yep.
I lay down in bed to watch it at 10 o'clock at night, right? I'm about 15 minutes into it. And basically, this is the Antichrist. And this is what proves to me this is real. About 15 minutes into the show, all of a sudden on 2 of the walls, the noises came back, almost like a drum beat, bop, 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 tapping on both sides of the walls, right? I jumped up, I turned the TV off, it stopped. That was them, like praising this show, which was, really talking about the Antichrist. So it's still not over. There's the pinging sounds. I still hear some noises, some banging sounds. One night, I say my prayers now every night. I say my prayers, and then I add to it. I'm kind of angry because that's me. I say, God, give me the sword of Michael. I will slay the demon for you. And as soon as I said that, right above me on the ceiling, 2 big knocks, like a fist. Boom, boom. And I don't say, knock, knock, who's there? I didn't say a word at that point. So it's April 20th. Again, I document this. I go to Myrtle Beach. I visit my daughter. I decide I'm going to write this book. It took me 2 months, basically, 3 months to write the book. I come home April 20th from Myrtle Beach. I wrote it on paper because I didn't have my laptop with me. I sit down in my office to start typing up my manuscript for the book, The UFOlogist. I look up. 130 feet of my backyard burst into flames. It was already in flames. I didn't see it burst into flames, but I look up, I see my entire yard up in flames. It's on the other side of my fence, and I have pictures of it. It's in my presentation. It's in my book. It's on fire. I've lived here 19 years. I've never had a fire in the backyard. Now, here's the huge coincidence. Last year, in September, I ordered my headstone. I wanted to do it myself. It's 6 feet tall. It actually is the Holy Bible. It says on the side, Holy Bible. It's a very religious headstone. They were in the cemetery that I can see from my house. The moment that burst into flames, they finished installing my headstone. I didn't know that they were there doing that. After the fire department comes, they put out the fire. I get a call from the funeral guy, the mausoleum guy. He says, "How do you like your headstone?" Then I realized the people I saw in the cemetery. I called the police. I told them there's 3 guys in the cemetery. They lit my yard on fire, and they said no. They called it in too. So what happened basically on that day is I sit down to write this book, which is an outing of the demons to tell people that this is real. The yard bursts into flames. My headstone gets delivered, which is very religious. And from that day on, those birds for 19 months stopped flying into my window. And I have witnesses on this. I have had people over my house. They've heard the birds. They've seen them. They've heard them hit the windows at night, chirping. And birds don't fly at night unless they're startled. And that has been basically the June 23rd, I get the priest to come over. He finally, after months of calling and asking for help, he comes by, but he only does the house blessing. He doesn't do a cleansing. Then this July, just a couple of months ago, I go upstairs again, and in the hallway, 2 nights in a row, is this column of gas. It wasn't sulfur. It was more like propane, but it was only in one spot in the hallway, not in the bathroom, not in the bedrooms. In that same spot, I smelled the rotting dead animal 2 years earlier. The dog was going crazy at night too, barking like he's seeing something in the house. I called the gas company. They came, they checked everything. There's no gas leak. The last things that have happened back in really just recently is my dog will be upstairs with me when I'm getting ready to go to bed. I have tile floors downstairs. And when he walks across the floor, you hear his nails because he's heavy. He's 108 pounds. And he's got long nails. You can't clip him. He'll bite you. I'm upstairs. I hear him walking across the floor. I look. He's there on the rug with me. Something is making these sounds walking across the floor. And there are some really weird knocks and bangs coming from under the refrigerator. And that is about the end of my experiences. I know you only got a little time left, but I want to tell you about... So now in my mind, the tie-in here, in my mind, like I had just said, and I want to tell you a little bit more about my trip to Scotland and what I found out to finish my book. But the tie-in here is, like I said, when you look at DNA and you look at chromosomes, you cannot breed creatures that are not related. You know, you can breed a lion and a tiger, a dog and a wolf, a donkey and a horse, but You cannot breed a human with a chimp, and we're 96% similar. So if this alien abduction thing is going on, like I said an hour ago, it has to be going on from humans that return from the future, a species on this planet that is extremely similar to us, or something that has bred with us in the past, which is the fallen angels and the Nephilim. It cannot be explorers from space. They would not have DNA similar to us. And I think that's huge. A couple of other things I learned, and this is really important, is, and this is why I think when you experience that out-of-body, not the out-of-body, the altered states, like near-death experience, alien abduction, and demonic possession when they're in you, I think those are all done by these angels and demons. The near-death experience is positive. The abduction and the possession are negative, and they're, like I said, in different dimensions, which we would in religion say heaven and hell. So that's my tie-in with all of that. I still say there's a significance to going to my first UFO conference and having that stuff happen to me in '99. I had been going to Comic-Cons, horror cons. I have about 30 of those models that you buy that are professionally painted, and now they're in resin. I have famous monsters of filmland. I have horror movies, but the ramp-up came the weekend I went to a UFO conference. So I think there's a huge tie in there with the whole abduction thing. I think it's totally separate from the spacecraft and what used to take place, where you would see a small craft, a being in a uniform, trying to take you and get some sort of a sample from you. It somehow morphed in the 80s or so, in the 90s, to the grays and this clone, not even cloning, this hybrid thing of even having sex with you and taking fetuses and stuff. That doesn't make any sense to me as far as being a scientist from space. That is the Nephilim. That is this demonic thing that's going on. But here's a few more things that really got me thinking. I had Nick Redfern at my conference in Pittsburgh in November of 14, right after this stuff happened in June of 14. And I'm telling him about it, and he goes, John, read my book, Final Events. So I read it. There's a chapter in there on the Collins Elite. So now you got a branch of the CIA called the Collins Elite. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but they concluded, they looked at UFOs, they looked at the paranormal. Their conclusion is there are no UFOs. It's all demonic and paranormal. That's their conclusion. The other thing I learned from his book is, when was the first gray ever seen, ever drawn, ever, sketched? Well, it was in 1918 was the first time, and it was a conjured up being from a satanic ritual. It was conjured up by Aleister Crowley. That is the first time a gray was ever seen as far as being drawn and described. So now you got the Collins Elite saying it's demonic. Your first gray is brought up during an occult ritual. And the other things I told you, I go to Scotland, and my book is not quite done. It's in June, and I learn a few more things, right? When I went there, I write articles for Phenomenon magazine and Steve Mira and Brian Allen. I tell them I'm coming up to Scotland, Edinburgh. Is there anybody I can meet with up there? So they set it up. I have lunch with two people from the Scottish Paranormal Institute, Brian Allen and Rich Ritchie. And Brian Allen is the editor of Phenomenon magazine. We exchange books. He says, read my books, read about the Skull Experiment, and read about Rosslyn Chapel, the Devil's Cord. Right? So when we talk for 4 hours, here's more proof that this whole thing is fallen angel, malevolent, interdimensional entities. I hate to say demonic because it turns people off. The Skull Experiment in England, 1993 to 98, 5 years. They had 4 people that stayed in the group and others that filtered through, right? It was an experiment to contact the afterlife. They originally didn't know what they made contact with. The thing says, I will communicate with you and show myself if there is no light. It has to be dark. So they're filming it, and there's probably just a little bit of light in the room, but not bright lights. It shows itself. It's a gray. So they're doing this experiment into the afterlife to contact the dead, and what they conjure up is a gray. So that's another point. So now I go, they tell me about the Devil's Cord at Roslin Chapel in Scotland, right? Now, this is something you don't see in any of the books. You don't see in the Da Vinci Code. He says, when you go there, look at the east wall, there are tiles up top, and they're musical notes. And what it is a very heavy type of music that when played opens a portal, and it's that real like organ type music. And he said the church removed a number of the tiles so you can't play the full ensemble, and actually forbid that music to be played during the Middle Ages, for hundreds of years until recently, basically. So besides that, the most important thing I found in Brian Allen's book, the thing I had been looking for is, I would say to people, just like I didn't understand what angels and archangels were, is now I'm asking people, and I'm asking religious people too, how powerful is a demon? Like, what can they do? I know from reading books and books on exorcism, Father Malachi, Martin, and those people, they can burst a rug on fire. They can throw chairs across the room. They've even thrown refrigerators across the room. Okay, but how powerful are they? Could they crush my house?
John,
Yeah.
I gotta cut you off here, my friend, because we only got about 30 seconds left with you tonight.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to go a little more than 2 hours.
Well, we can do that if you want to skip over the break. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. Let's pick this up over the break, and then I'll answer your questions. It's the most important part of the story.
Absolutely. We'll get to it. John Ventre is our guest, the UFOlogist. MUFONPA.com is his website. We'll be back right after this.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with UFOcop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride. If you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember it is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password in the SOR Space Travelers Club for the night. He does it every night. Erudite is the password if you're listening in. Erudite is your password. Good to have Bill do that on a nightly basis. That should earn a big mention. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like. Spaced Out Radio Show on Instagram. I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show on Instagram. I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. You can also tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can check out the SOR Spacewire by our news director, Eric Markham. Read up on our blogs, check out our Music Man, Bumblefoot, and sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club. Your name gets put into monthly prize draws. You get access to private group interviews, access to special sections on our website, and so much more. If you've had an experience you would like it investigated, fill out the SOR Sightlines report. Doesn't matter. Bigfoot, UFOs, aliens, paranormal, we want to hear about it. All your personal information is 100% confidential. Joining us for the next little bit, John Ventre, author extraordinaire. His latest book, The UFOlogist, can be found on his website, MUFONPA.com, as well as on Amazon. He is also hosting a Paracon in just a week and a half in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So if you're on the East Coast, this is one you are going to want to check out. John, welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Hey, let me add also, my website is johnventre.com, very simply, and you can also get conference and my books and a link that takes you right to Kindle, but the books are obviously autographed by me. Let me continue with this.
Please do.
Then, yeah. So now my curiosity, like I already told you, I didn't think the hybrid breeding thing made a lot of sense. I now go back and look at a bunch of UFO cases. I'm very sensitive to now this fallen angel theory that I experienced. So, I go back, and I didn't know that Albert Bender actually wrote a book on the Men in Black. I read Gray Barker's version, but I found Albert Bender had written a book, I think, in 1959. I go back and read that, and I spoke with Nick Redfern. Absolutely, the first accounts of the Men in Black in 1953 by Albert Bender are demonic. They're ghoulish. They got glowing eyes. They smell of sulfur. And Albert Bender prided himself on his occult paranormal collection. You go back and you look at the Flatwoods monster. You got this thing that's floating in the air with claws, and I think it had a red face or red eyes and green skin, smell of sulfur. You look at Mothman. It's basically a flying being with white or gray skin, so that's not an ET, but it's some sort of a creature. You look at the cattle mutilations, absolutely ritual sacrifice. And, people say, what's the connection there? The Collins elite that Nick Redfern spoke about is still in existence today. They try to investigate the demonic and the paranormal with a strategic goal of harnessing those demonic powers to use as a weapon. So whatever is going on with the cattle mutilations, that is done by our government or a paramilitary that these are ritual sacrifices to appease some sort of deity that the CIA and Collins elite is working with, trying to outsmart. Now, that's not my theory, but that's what really you got to read, Nick's work and read up on the Collins elite. Another kicker was I come across a 1997 report by Lord Hill Norton of England. Big name guy, ufologists should know who he was. I think he was an admiral. I mean, he was involved in a lot of UFO cases, right? He writes a paper called the UFO Concern Report. the Hill Norton UFO Initiative, right? Now, I'm kind of wondering to myself, with all the knowledge I have in UFOs, I have never heard of this thing. And what is his conclusion? He says the UFO, the contact is demonic, is what it is. And I find it kind of interesting that, not that these things are suppressed, they're not talked about. We want to talk about nuts and bolts craft that fly here from space, even though no one has any idea of how they can actually make that trip. And then the more you read, Carla Turner, Joe Jordan, who found hundreds of abduction cases that were stopped by the person asking Jesus Christ for protection. The E.T. Gray backed away. Guy Malone, L.A. Marzulli, Arthur C. Clarke, Whitley Strieber, they all believe that these things are fallen angels. You read Hynek, Valet, Keel, Mack. They all said they're interdimensional. They're not from space. So, in my mind, if you're going to say they're interdimensional and you're going to get into the altered states, then I think what you're getting into is you're getting into the fallen angels. I think that's really what these altered states are. I just read a book yesterday and today talking about Hitler. If there was ever a demonic guy, it was Hitler. They describe him in a meeting in Bavaria, where he's at that retreat that they had up in the mountains. He's there with his generals, and he's cowering and saying, look, the person over there. What is that over there? It's in the room, and it's talking to me. They don't see it. He sees it. And that's a demonic entity that was attached to Hitler. Think about Hitler, the things he did. Why did he go after the Jews, right? They were the smallest minority in Germany, but they were God's chosen people. And if you believe in the Nephilim, and if you believe in the fallen angels, their goal is to corrupt the DNA of humans and stop the return of Jesus if there's no more pure humans left. That's what this hybrid program is about. That's what Hitler saw. That's what Hitler went after. He was very occult with the Vril, the Thule Society, and the belief in the hollow earth theory. So that's the things I've been looking at, and I got a long list of this in my book, in my presentations that I'm going to do next weekend in Philly. But the most important thing that happened that I believe, and I mention it a number of times in my book, is when I met with Brian Allen in Scotland and he gave me his book, I came across what I was looking for. I had been asking people, how strong is Satan? How strong are these other levels? What can they actually do? Well, I found it. And what it is in his book, there's a Latin term, and this is why you have to do these things. I actually go to a Latin Mass once a month now. I go to my regular Catholic church, and I go to another one about 10 miles away. They do the Latin High Mass, because when you say it in the original words, it has much more power. And if you do an exorcism, or if I ever need the house cleansing, which I'll find out shortly, I think this November, once Halloween passes, if they come back, because that's when it seems to be. November is the peak, and Thanksgiving for me seems to be the peak of the attacks. It has to be done in Latin because of the power of the words, the resonance, the frequency, the original way it was said. So what I find in Scotland is a Latin term called Goetia, Goetia. I would tell every one of your listeners to look this up. This word is the key to ancient alien theory. And I have a chapter in my book that explains why ancient alien theory is wrong. Even though I wrote a book called An Alternative History of Mankind, that I retell our history as though the aliens have always been here, genetically upgraded us, built all the ancient sites, interfered in our history, I now say I'm wrong with that. The aliens have been here. You see them in petroglyphs, rock cavings, drawings. They're here to observe. They're explorers, but they didn't do the things that Van Daniken and Giorgio and some of these other people say they did. The ancient alien show that's on, Ancient Aliens, is totally wrong. And this is the reason. This word Goetia means it's words, frequency, and resonance that control fallen angels and angels. And the example that's given when you look it up on the internet is King Solomon's temple was built by controlling angels and fallen angels. Humans didn't build that temple. He was given the spell to use by God to control the angels and the fallen angels. It's exactly the same as in Islam when you have a genie and a bottle and you rub it and you get 3 wishes and they can do anything for you. You're controlling the angels and the fallen angels. So this is what's out there under this word, but it has to be said in the original form. Think about witchcrafts and spells. You have to say it. Every word has to be correct. If you change a letter or a word, you lose the strength of the spell. It has to be said a certain way. That's why this has to be said in Latin. It has to be said the way it had been said for the last 1,000 or 2,000 years. So now in my book, I have a chapter that explains why ancient alien theory is wrong. And this is that other thing that bothered me the past 20 years. One was the DNA biological ability to take people and create hybrids, which is not possible if you don't have a 98% match with humans. The other thing was, I'm a big Star Trek fan, not Star Wars, Star Trek. And I say to myself, if Kirk and Spock showed up in the Enterprise and went to a world and there was an episode on Star Trek and they were going to build something, would they quarry stone? Would they really quarry stone and not have 3D printing or technology to make aluminum or graphene or nuts and bolts? Why would aliens come and quarry stone? It makes absolutely no sense. They would have some form of technology. And that's where Van Daniken and Giorgio are absolutely wrong. I don't think they even know about this word Goetia because I never knew about it. And I think I know as much about the the UFO field as those guys. So what I put in my book is a chapter explaining that ancient alien theory is actually ancient deity theory. Think about it. The walls of Jericho came down by some sort of vibration. King Solomon built his temple by using these words. And if you understand that, and I did a lot of reading previously on the Knights Templars and Freemasons. If that's what was in King Solomon's temple and the Ark of the Covenant was there, what was also in the Ark of the Covenant was this spell, Goetia, the words that control the fallen angels and the angels. That is more important than the 10 Commandments or the chalice that could be in the Ark of the Covenant. These words are the most important thing that could possibly be in there, similar to the Devil's Cord that are in Rosslyn Chapel. But these are powerful spells. That's what's in there. So now think about it, and think about the symmetry here. The King Solomon's temple, what happened was the Templar Knights during the Crusades went there, took all the gold and the Ark of the Covenant. Where did they bring it? Rosslyn Chapel, where I went, that has the Devil's Cord up on the tiles on the ceiling. The Ark of the Covenant was there. That's where it had been. If you know anything about what happens later with King Solomon's temple and the start of the Freemasons, what happens is these 3 thieves want to know how to build the Ark of the Covenant and the pyramids and those great monuments. And there's a guy by the name of Hiram Abif. He knows how to do it. He knows the spell. He knows how to do it. He will not tell them. They kill him. And if you read a book on this, there's only 3 people in the world that know the spell. They know how to build King Solomon's temple. So the thieves kill him. That starts the Freemason Freemasonry. And actually, when you get initiated, they go through the killing of Hiram Abiff. They do that to you, faking it, obviously, hitting you in the head, stabbing you, doing what they do. It's part of the Freemason ritual. So to me, it makes perfect sense. Why are the 3 pyramids in Egypt, the oldest pyramids, perfect? And all of the copies that came after it, built by men, are falling apart, and they never achieved the perfection of the 3. Because none of those were built by aliens. They were built by being able to control the angels and the fallen angels, which could levitate. They could move the 1,200-ton blocks in Baalbek. And at these other sites, and in Peru and all these other sites. So, you have to read that chapter. I fully explain from Jericho to the pyramids to King Solomon's temple, et cetera, why it was the controlling of these more powerful entities that quarried and moved the stone, and not aliens. Aliens quarrying stone makes absolutely no sense. So I think what I did was prove ancient alien theories wrong. I think I proved that the alien hybrid program is not alien. It's Nephilim. It's fallen angel. And I also proved that UFOs are real, but these demonic entities, these fallen angels are real. And if you don't, and I hate to bring religion into it, but whoever you believe in is the person you better believe in, because it's the only way that you can stop an alien abduction or a demonic possession. And I experienced that, and I can tell you, and I don't care if people think I'm nuts or whatever, I don't have to see, Jesus or an angel. I have the faith of an apostle because of what I experienced. I was in the presence of angels and demons. This happened. I didn't see them, but I saw the outcome. I have a 1,000% faith right now that that's real. Angels and demons are real. That's my story. That's my presentation I'll give next week. That's what's in my book. So what do you think now? And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You know what? I think it's an incredible story, John. I mean, there is so much that ties everything together. Do you believe, then, that extraterrestrials believe in God or a higher deity?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that question, because here's what I believe now is I had read books years ago, or people have said to me, a lot of times the gray, when he's in the presence of the Nordics seem to be controlled by the Greys, that the Greys are more in charge, in the craft and stuff. So my thinking now says we actually have a lot in common with the extraterrestrial. Think about what the Vatican said, Father Funes and Balducci, that in all of God's eminence, he could have created life elsewhere besides here. But they would be our space brothers, and they're probably fallen just like we are. Well, absolutely. I say the ET has the exact same issues with good and evil, with malevolent interdimensional entities and guardian angels that we do. I think we have that in common with them. I think if we could make contact with them, they would have a similar religious story or belief in an entity that was God and negative entities that are malevolent. I absolutely believe we have that in common with them.
See, I wonder about that sometimes, because when people are brought forward to the whole extraterrestrial entity, we don't think of it as a religious figure. People have been brainwashed, and I will use that term, to think that they are all malevolent, that they are all some sort of demonic presence, that they are only here to harvest or to rape, pillage, everything along those lines. But the way I look at it is, if God is the Alpha and the Omega, and the creator of all, he obviously created more life forces than just here on this planet. So if we look at that theory, that maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but let's say for this instance it is, if we look at that theory, we have to suspect that any extraterrestrial presence is also a God-fearing creature as well. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't believe in atheism, or maybe they're agnostic, or whatever they call it up there. But there has to be some sort of sense of hierarchy.
I agree with you 100%. I think that is exactly why the Vatican has 2 observatories, one in Arizona, one in Rome. You know, they're waiting, and I believe the third secret of Fatima tells us when they're going to be here, and that's why the Vatican's looking, because they are going to spin it, and they're going to say that these are our space brothers. They do believe in God, and I personally believe they do, that they... You know, they have the same problems we have with this malevolence, this demonic entity that's all through the universe, but they also have the guardian angel. I really believe no matter what they look like, we have that in common with them.
What do you think the Vatican is hiding, John, in regards to maybe paranormal and the connection to the UFO world?
Well, I think a lot. I think absolutely there's a lot. There are 140 additional rooms in the Vatican full of artwork and sculptures and things. They have other Pietas and Mona Lisas and stuff. They have. I think years ago they were worth $140 billion. That was 10, 15 years ago when I was researching my end-time prophecy 15 years ago. But in their library, they absolutely know the truth to this stuff. And I think one of the reasons that, was it John Paul I was killed, he was in office for 30 days, not only auditing the books, but there were other things that he found out that he was going to bring forward. And that's actually in my book also. So, you know, and I've read these other books, and I don't want to be blasphemous and stuff, but when I started an end-time prophecy, went to UFOs, went to demonology, went back to the church, but there are numerous writers out there who say when the end times come and the Antichrist rises, it'll come from the Vatican. The Vatican has been infiltrated all the way to the top. And even that Malachi Martin, who wrote the books on the exorcism I read, 5 case histories, the most unbelievable documentation of exorcism you can read, he says the Vatican has been compromised all the way to the top with these demonic entities, priests, bishops, cardinals that are possessed. All you got to do is look at the pedophile priests. What do you think that is? That is a destruction of the church and infiltration of the church by these men who have some sort of a entity attached to them, a malevolent entity to do what they do. And, you know, these books, Exo Vaticano, and there's a couple I read, I can't think of the names, they all say that when the time comes, it's going to be through the church, and it may actually be the Pope that is an imposter at that point and is actually helping or is the Antichrist.
Why do you think the Vatican is so hesitant to come out with their information? Because it goes a lot further than extraterrestrial life and UFOs, which there has been stories out there that a couple of popes, including John Paul II, have met with extraterrestrial beings. We also, if we look at it, we know that the Vatican is said to be built over in one of the catacombs where John the Baptist's grave is. We know they own the Shroud of Turin, which is said to be that of Jesus Christ, yet they will not confirm nor deny the existence. They always play this maybe, maybe not game where, you know, it could be not, you know. And to me, when you have 1.3 billion followers around the world who are looking for some sort of answer in this chaos, the Vatican could do so much to help, and yet they continue to play these games. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, the Vatican is built on the grounds of Caligula's circus. So how do you like that for irony? That's what was there before the Vatican was there, is Caligula's circus was there. But, I think it goes to power. And if you look, I read a book called The Bad Popes. When you look over the years, the popes have done everything you can imagine, killed people, adultery, numerous wives, stolen. They went after the Templars. All the Templars did for them during the Crusades, the Pope and the King of France were upset the Templars had all the money and the power in France. They turned on them and said they were devil worshippers and went after the Templars, which is why they ended up going to Scotland and Roslin Chapel and took what they could with them. But I think it's all about power. Or they do know a lot more than about a lot of things, obviously. But you even take the Fatima sighting. They were so convinced something was going to happen in 1960. They overruled the Virgin Mary, if that's who it really was, and not a extraterrestrial. They overruled the Virgin Mary. The Pope did, and didn't give us the third secret. But they had Vatican I in 1959. Anticipating, but what they knew was going to happen, they couldn't tell us. And when it didn't happen, they really had mud on their face. They built it up, and then nothing happened. It's just like the CIA and our government that denies and denies and denies there's any UFOs, there's anything going on, but you come up with proof after proof after proof. And thank God we have alternative news, shows like this, the internet, or you will never get the truth. You see it in this election. I have never seen such a phony system in my life. The top 1/10%, the lobbyists, the corrupt politicians are going to keep this thing going. And you've got, whether you like Trump or you don't, you have to see how the deck is stacked against him, from the mainstream media to the search engines to Facebook to Google to AOL. The polls are phony. And it's the truth. This is so you can imagine how easy it is to cover up other truths or make the guy who has information appear to be a nut, arrest him, take it from him, throw him in jail, throw him in a loony bin. You really see how power corrupts.
And we're watching that right now, and that actually is a great segue into what happens. WikiLeaks recently released a bunch of emails regarding Hillary and John Podesta, whom everybody around these parts knows is very involved in the field of ufology. His knowledge from behind the scenes and the pressure he is putting on, especially Hillary Clinton, to disclose the files that are not of national security. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing, that they are going that far. In fact, one reporter today, I believe it was from CNN, basically said on air it is illegal to read WikiLeaks now. That's how corrupt this whole thing is getting. And the U.S. government, according to reports that John Kerry has pressured the Ecuadorian government to shut down Julian Assange's email server and email and internet access. This is getting ridiculous. We're seeing things the United States government is doing that we only thought happened in communist countries.
I agree with you. I am absolutely stunned at what really goes on, and we don't know 10% of what really goes on. And in those same lines that you're talking about, 2 points. One, I was with my congressman last week. Whenever I go to anything, we were at the I'm a member of the I can't think of the words now, but we were at a luncheon. He always says to the people when I come over and say hello, he goes, "Oh, do you know John Ventre investigates UFOs?" And I said to him, "Do you know that Hillary is heavily involved in this?" He didn't know anything about it, and he laughs, and the people with him laugh. So you really got to wonder, our politicians, most of them are not at all up on this, And if they're seeing any of this, because it's really mostly not in the mainstream news, what are they thinking? But the other thing to go exactly hand in hand with what you're talking about, the killing of bin Laden. I don't know if you know the whole story on that now as far as trying to get information, but what happened was the Associated Press, I think they filed a lawsuit or something. They went after the military, the Pentagon, to produce the photos of bin Laden, who was dead. They wanted pictures of him dead in the place, his body, the burial, whatever happened. What they did was the Pentagon took all the files, they gave it to the CIA. The CIA said this is above top secret. The Supreme Court cannot force the CIA to produce files that they believe are of national security. So now you think about what happened. Everybody knows bin Laden was killed, and I know people say he was killed previously, but let's say that's all true, and he was killed that night and, taken on to St. Vincent, the ship, I think that's Vincent, whatever it was called. All the pictures, the helicopter that crashed, or when they blew up, those maintenance records were taken. You cannot even prove that that helicopter went down and crashed and was then blown up so that they couldn't get it. Every piece of that has been given to the CIA, and I don't know what they're hiding. We don't want to upset the Muslims and show his pictures. Well, I think they're pretty upset with us anyhow in the Middle East, so what difference does it make? They've made an entire conspiracy out of this. But what you learn from it is they give it to the CIA. The federal court, the Supreme Court, cannot force the CIA to produce the bin Laden photos because they're national security. So that's the type of power and the things that go on. So you could just imagine whatever the truth is with the paranormal, with UFOs, the one thing I know for a fact is our soul belongs to God. And I even said this to my son. He's got diabetes, and I've said to people, I don't know that God cares about your body. If you think about it, he only cares about your soul, what you think, the things you do, the actions you take. I don't really care. I think he cares if you're blind, if you have one leg, if you die early, if you die late, if you get cancer. It's how you react to it. It's how you overcome things. It's whether you do something illegal. It's whether you hurt another person. I know for a fact that our soul belongs to God, and that's the thing that the malevolent entities are after. As far as your body goes, that may be evolution. We may have been upgraded by ETs. I don't know. All of that is possible. The only thing I know is true is our soul leaves us. That's your higher thought process of your mind, and that goes to this altered state, and you either go to heaven or you go to hell. I believe that 100%.
What happens if Hillary gets in? Do you think that John Podesta gets his wish and there is disclosure?
There might be. I think there's a good chance that's going to happen. I think if Trump gets in, I think the stock market takes a 20 to 30% pullback. But I think we do things like slowing down globalization, which is destroying the middle class, and he'll do some patriotic things. I think if Hillary gets in, it's business as usual, lobbyists, and as corrupt a politician there is her, but she will be a very good president because she's totally corrupt, and that makes her a good president.
Sticking with this, there is a lot of information, especially in the latest WikiLeaks release about John Podesta, about singer from Blink-182, Tom DeLonge, trying to gather people for his own research, and it ties into John Podesta as well. And it ties into Area 51, Lockheed Skunk Works. We're getting into some pretty serious stuff here that, yes, it may be national security or branded that way, but on the flip side, has it surprised you that with all this information that is coming out from WikiLeaks, that the mainstream media is not even picking up one iota of the UFO talks?
Yeah, that's the corruption. That's what you see. And you know what kills me? I saw it on Facebook. Somebody put it on my site. How come when WikiLeaks put out information on Bush, the military was all over it? Now that he puts out information on Hillary and UFOs and Podesta, they don't go near it at all. He was a hero 5-10 years ago, whatever it was, and now he's a goat. You know, it shows the absolute corruption that's out there, and it's a shame.
How dirty does this topic have to be, John, in order to deny everything that is going on? To have control of the media, basically telling the higher-ups, do not cover this story, do not cover the UFOs, do not cover any alien contact, do not follow anything what Podesta says.
Yeah, well, back in World War II, you had Project Mockingbird, I believe what it was called, and that was the CIA had contacts at every news and media outlet in the country. And it had to, because it was trying to keep the, our secrets quiet. Actually, it wasn't the CIA at that point, because they weren't in existence till 52. But, the Manhattan Project, everything else that goes on over the years, they had those contacts that were laid. And those are still the same contacts that are with the Bill Ayers of Fox and the Rubensteins and whoever owns Time, New York Times and Wall Street Journal. At the very high levels, those contacts are still there, and they are told, you don't cover this stuff. And I've seen it so many times, just trying to get media coverage for my conferences and stuff. I got Stan Friedman flying into Pittsburgh in November, right? And he worked at Westinghouse here in Pittsburgh. He gave his first UFO lecture at Carnegie Mellon. He gave his first radio talk on KDKA radio here in Pittsburgh. I cannot get anybody in Pittsburgh to do an interview with him. I'm flying him in a day early so I can spend Friday taking him to TV news, radio shows. I don't have one offer right now. I'm bringing him in a day early. Not one wants to interview him when he started here in Pittsburgh.
There is a conspiracy to this all. How deep do you think, then, the U.S. government is in this black ops of extraterrestrials and UFO contact? Because with all the information that is coming out, especially with this WikiLeaks leak, there is a plethora of information out there that basically says this is real, this is what's happening at Area 51, we have this technology, and yet with the denial and the lack of coverage to the public, we are really, really doing a great job at covering it up, save for the alternative media, who is not falling for that for the most part.
Well, I give you a couple examples. I was on the Anderson Cooper show in 2012. He made some comments that the government's, inept. They can't keep secrets. Of course, I told him, that the stealth fighter was 1976 technology. What do you think we got now? He didn't believe any of that. This goes extremely deep. Another example, and this goes right over everybody's head. December of 2012, I'm watching the news, right? What do I see on the news? A 2-minute blip that the Navy landed a remote control space shuttle on an aircraft carrier, the X-37B. It was in space. It had been used since 1999. This particular mission left in 2009 and came back in 2012, and they landed it. The reason why Obama canceled the space shuttle program is since 1999, we've been flying a drone space shuttle, remote controlled. This one was in space for 3 years. Who knows where it's been? And if they're showing you that, and that was the point I was making with Anderson Cooper, we kept the Manhattan Project secret. Stealth technology, we waited 12 years before we brought it out. In 1988, it's 1976 technology. This drone space shuttle is 1999 technology we brought out in 2012. And if we're showing it to you, we got a hell of a lot more.
We only see what they want us to see. I mean, look at the Aurora project. Every day at a certain time in California, there's an earthquake coming out of Nevada at around 4:15 p.m. It rates about 1.4 on the Richter scale, so they don't even report it. Yet it always starts from Nevada. And
you look at the Taos, New Mexico, the Hum. If you don't think they're building these deep underground military bases, they absolutely are. But we're not told about any of this stuff. I understand that certain things you got to keep quiet for national security because, the Chinese will steal it. And I kind of even think now is that, we know they're stealing a lot of our secrets. They've built aircraft carriers and stealth fighters, but that is not the best we have. We have that secret space program. We probably have our own flying saucers right now that can just annihilate, anything we put up in the air or whatever China and Russia puts up there. So certain things have to be kept quiet for national security. I understand that. I sleep better at night knowing we got a extremely dishonest CIA and government, and they will do whatever it takes to protect America. I'm okay with that. Just don't put me on your target list, But I sleep good at night knowing that we got that, and these are the people that protect us. But they will do anything, whatever it takes. They will do anything to protect the United States. And sometimes that can go too far, like the ufologist in Poland who just got killed yesterday, right? The guy goes over to give a UFO talk and he's dead. He's 39 years old. Natural causes, of course, and they said some black fluid was coming out of his nose.
No, absolutely. Max Spears, who died actually a couple weeks ago, we had Lorian Fenton on talking about Max, and she said she knew details, but she just couldn't get into them at this time. I'm very curious to find that out, because why go all the way over to Poland to kill him? You know
what I found out? It's kind of weird how there's synchronicity with this stuff. I can't think of the guy's name. He wrote a book called UFOs Over Poland about 3 months ago, and Philip Mantle asked me to review the book. I wrote a review on it. It was a great book. But one of the things I read in there is that the United States government has a Gitmo-type base in Poland. It's hidden. It's in Eastern Europe, and they do whatever they want in Poland. So if there's a connection there to the CIA or some government killing or whatever needs to get done, we have a bunch of these Gitmo bases. I think there was another one in Romania, in other places around the world, but there was definitely one in Poland, and I never knew that.
Incredible, all these hidden bases that seem to be popping up. Did you ever think that you would see the day, John, whether it's the field of ufology or whether it's the cover-ups that are happening in the U.S. government, where Russia seemed to look like the sane country?
Well, no, when Trump said that Putin is a better leader than Obama, he hit the nail on the head, not meaning he was a good leader, he was just a better leader at what he does. Just like Hitler was better than the whoever was running England at the time who kept looking the other way. Hitler was the stronger leader. Well, Putin is absolutely KGB. He understands Obama's weaknesses and is making a fool out of us. And, he should be on the cover of Time magazine as the man of the year, because he's absolutely making Obama look like an amateur.
I think it's absolutely incredible watching this, because all of a sudden this dastardly hatred towards Vladimir Putin and the Russians right now is, lack of a better term, hilarious to watch, because for so long we've been warned about the big bad Russians, how they're like a, lack of a better term, a pit bull dog that can just have that thing in their brain go twing and bam, they attack. We see that so much, and we've been ingrained that the Russians are like that. Yet when you look around the world, the Russians, besides the Crimea and the Ukraine, damn Russians with my Ukrainian background, but besides the Crimea, they really haven't done anything. They finally had enough in Syria where they said, okay, let's just go get rid of this mess. And they have become almost like the world's police officers, which was the United States job. And you look at the messes over the last, since 9/11, what has been caused in the Middle East. It is disgusting to see what they have done to bring unsettlement into that area.
Yeah, well, you look at it, and what happened in the Crimea was a vote. It was legal. That just shows you how much smarter Putin is. And even Trump says we should have never taken out Saddam Hussein and Assad in Syria and the guy in George Gaddafi, another one. You completely destabilized the area. So, you've got Putin doing and another thing, a positive thing, even though he runs an oligarchy and they are basically a mafia, you don't have the bank corruption and the corporate corruption in Russia that you have in the United States. But they steal a lot of that money, and it's basically an oligarchy. But they don't allow the things to happen that happens here, which happens solely for greed.
True enough, but I still wouldn't want to mess with the Russian mob.
No, not at all, because you know what? You'll need a radiation detector like that guy they killed. They went into the British bar, followed him, put that fast-acting radiation into his drink, and killed him. And the whole bar is radioactive everywhere the bartender and this guy was. Except it took that guy like 2 weeks to die, and it should have worked quicker.
Yes,
that's
indeed.
Putin again.
Well, exactly, and the Russian government, we're not, and don't get me wrong, listeners, I'm not here to praise the Russian government. I'm not here to rain down holy terror on what is happening in the U.S., but I think for the first time in our lives, the conspiracy theorists, like me, like you, like everyone out there, are finally right. We're finally getting some respect where people are opening up their eyes more than ever, saying, holy crap, the tinfoilers had this right. This has all been rigged.
Well, and Trump is a huge conspiracy theorist guy. So, we may think Hillary will tell us about UFOs, but if Trump finds out, he will tell you. And, and he's totally right in wanting to get a better relationship with Putin. You cannot allow this to continue. Hillary may end up I think, matter of fact, you saw today, Putin's moving his aircraft carriers and his ships into the Mediterranean. He is putting Assad back into Syria, and I think Trump will tell him that's okay. He better never use chemical weapons again, but we need to stabilize the Middle East, put some dictators back in, and stop what's going on right now. 15 years, $3 trillion, millions of people killed and displaced. It's totally out of control. Putin understands it. Hillary and Obama don't understand it. I think there will be a confrontation if Hillary is president, Hillary and Putin. I think you're going to see planes and ships in a small skirmish and a fight, and then it'll be settled before there's any nuclear war. But I don't think that'll happen if Trump is president. But I think it will happen in the Middle East because Putin is putting Assad back in, and he's moving his military in, and he's making a statement.
Well, the funny part, and we have talked about this on this show, about this whole situation is we have the Russians acting tough, we have the Americans acting tough, and trying to restart the entire Cold War for absolutely no reason besides oil in the Middle East. Yet here we are playing all buddy-buddy with them up on the International Space Station like we're best friends. And we need, or the Americans need, the Russians in order to get to the ISS to get their astronauts up there. So I find it kind of ironic that there's this whole space treaty where we work together as best friends, and yet down below, here we are trying to butt heads for absolutely no reason. So what is the story? Are we friends, or are we not?
Yeah, well, you look at, our passports are made in South Korea. A lot of the electronics and components in our missile systems and our Defense Department is made in China. So are we that stupid? Maybe we are. Maybe we're just that stupid. Or The real story is that we've been involved in a space program, and we know a lot more that's going on in Russia, China, the United States. We've been to space. There's like Gary McKinnon said, and they're all part of it with us in this breakaway group that really is no longer Earthling. They may have been born here, but they've never lived here. They're doing something else, just like the X-37B. What's it been doing since 1999? And if it was in space 3 years, where was it? Mars? Is it destroying the face in Mars and all the evidence that may one day come out? Who knows?
Well, I'm a definite believer that we are on Mars. I do believe that the secret space program is quite real. What is your opinion of that?
No, I do. I agree that. And, when we did the Hangar One TV show, I was the only person in the world who, and I gave it to him in the show, they were doing the Gary McKinnon bit, and I said, you missed something. And I said, what you got to add to that episode is when President Reagan wrote his memoirs, his biography, whatever, he put in there that we have an outer space, we have 300 outer space officers. Oh, we do we? We have 5 space shuttles that hold 8. That's 40. Reagan wanted us to know that that was true about the outer space program. He wrote it in his diary that we had 300 outer space officers, but he couldn't, as president, he couldn't come out and just tell us, but he put it in there, just like he gave those speeches to the UN about a conflict with extraterrestrials. He gave us the hint, but that matched up exactly with what Gary McKinnon found in our Pentagon, and nobody knew about that. I had read that somewhere else, totally unrelated to UFOs, and I gave it to the producer, and we put it in the Hangar One episode. But one of the other things, I wrote a book called Apophis 2029. It's an end-time book about an asteroid. In it, the United States goes international. We're no longer the United States of America in 2029. We add 13 English-speaking countries to the United States, like the original 13 colonies, Canada, Australia, South Africa, but we added Great United Kingdom as 4 countries. And I'd love to see that happen. I think actually that was proposed back with FDR, that Great Britain join the United States. And what would happen, from what I've seen being over in England a number of times, in Scotland, the English politics would dominate the American politics. Our president will be a British guy because they are so much more intense and well-spoken and educated than the buffoons that we have.
We only got about 4 minutes left with you, my friend. Let's talk about the UFOlogist and your Paragon to wrap things up. First of all, explain how fun it was to write the UFOlogist.
Well, I wouldn't say it was fun because I had said I was not writing any more books after I wrote The Case for UFOs, which is absolutely the best book you can get to find out the truth about UFOs, the quotes, the documents, the history. I put together one section called Do You Know, Should You Know, in chronological order, 260 bullet points, in order of little-known facts about ufology that I've learned over the last 20 years, 18 years. And that book should be a textbook that every UFO investigator uses. But I said in the book at the end, I am done writing, I'm not writing anything else. I only wrote the ufologist because I had a demonic attack upon me which changed my thinking in a lot of ways. Not about UFOs. Everything in my book is true about UFOs. It changed my thinking on the abduction, hybridization, ancient alien theory, and it really pushed me back to God, something I had as a kid that I lost along the way for a long time due to a divorce. And it really pushed me back, and I know for a fact that the angel and demon story is real. So I wouldn't say it was fun, but it had that positive outcome. And the one thing I've learned, near-death experience, alien abduction, demonic attack, the people that survive that stuff, they're better people for it. They become much more concerned with the culture, the environment, world affairs, humanity, as opposed to making money and what's going on today. And that's the way I feel about things, and that's exactly what happens. So whether that physically changes your brain and your thought pattern and is a form of evolution, I think that is what happens to people. So it wasn't fun going through it. I hope it's over, but I feel I'm a much better person for it.
And quickly, we got about a minute left with you. I would love for you to break down the Philly Paracon, which will take place October 28th and 29th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, go to MUFONPA.com or JohnVentre.com. We have a DVD of my talk show in Pittsburgh. We have 2 speakers on UFO photos and crop circles. That's Friday night, cocktail hour. Saturday, 5 speakers, David Paulides, Daryl Sims, myself, Linda Zimmerman, Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright, and then a buffet dinner and a talk from George Filer on military cases with UFOs. Great conference. This is the most attended we've ever had in Philly with the pre-registrations. And then 3 weeks later in Pittsburgh is the Pittsburgh conference. Kathy Martin, Stanton Friedman, the former county commissioner of Allegheny County of Pittsburgh, talking about demonology, and I'm presenting the Kecksburg evidence. And there's also one other speaker talking about Apollo 20.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, John, for being on Spaced Out Radio again tonight. Your story was absolutely incredible. I'm going to get you to hold on for one moment here. I'm going to wrap this thing up. If you're listening on the Spaced Out Radio side, you're listening to Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses. He is the official music of this show. He brings us in and out every single night here on Spaced Out Radio. Do us a favor. If you're on Revolution Radio, donate today. freedomslips.com. Help us out. You can listen to this show or any of our shows on our archives, which are on YouTube, Spaced Out Radio Show, on TuneIn, and on iTunes. Tomorrow night on the show, the crypto guru Ronald Murphy will be with us. A week late, but the crypto guru will be in. We're talking hauntings tomorrow night with Ron Murphy, starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Thank you all for listening. We will be back in 21 hours from now. You have a good one.